Chapter 283. Old Hall Master Yang took out a wooden box and placed a single pill inside. Stingy, just one pill. Ling Xiao certainly knew that this pill was extraordinary. He had read the basic alchemy, so he naturally understood what this pill's luster represented and what its aura meant. This pill was at least a high-grade yellow-grade spirit pill. Even a 9th layer Transcendent Realm Master would crazily fight over it. This pill was called the Transcendent Body Shaping Pill. Swallowing it would neither temper one's body nor improve one's cultivation. However, this pill had a very big effect, which was to improve one's martial arts aptitude and reshape one's body, making it easier for one to reach the Transcendent Realm. To put it simply, if a half-step Grandmaster swallowed this pill, their chances of breaking through to the Transcendent Realm would increase by 50%. If a 9th layer Transcendent Realm cultivator swallowed this pill, their chances of breaking through to the Heaven Realm would increase by 20%. For Ling Xiao to say that he was stingy with such a powerful pill was purely a joke. This old man was really good to him. Stingy? If you don't want it, then forget it. No, of course I want it. Wouldn't I be a fool if I didn't want such a good thing? He was now an early 9th layer martial vein master, so his cultivation growth was a matter of course. Reaching the half-step Grandmaster level was also a matter of course. But breaking through to the Transcendent Realm was a hurdle. With this Transcendent Body Shaping Pill, he could basically fill up this hurdle. As long as he cultivated, with the increase of his true qi, breaking through to the Transcendent Realm would be a completely smooth matter. Senior sister, aren't you going to give me a reward? Ling Xiao looked at Lan Yu again and smiled brightly. He thought that Lan Yu would flatly refuse, but who knew that she would directly take out a colorful stone. This is a smelting stone, Ling Xiao exclaimed excitedly. You have good eyesight. You use a sword, but the treasure artifact you obtained from Li Anil is a spear, so obviously it's not suitable for you. However, if you have a smelting stone, you can ask a skilled artifact refiner to smelt this spear into a sword. Lan Yu smiled and said, Of course, the prerequisite is that you have to use a mortal artifact as a mold. Thank you, senior sister. Ling Xiao really did not expect that this senior sister, who was as cold as an iceberg, would actually be so meticulous. Knowing that he needed smelting stones, he prepared them for him. You're welcome. You promised to cook for us. Lan Yu smiled. Don't worry, I'll do it now. Ling Xiao, I also have a gift here. This is a martial yuan grass that I personally cultivated. It's not worth much, and it doesn't have any special effects. Although it's a little shabby, it's still a gift for me. Dai Yuling also prepared a gift for Ling Xiao. However, she naturally couldn't compare with Lan Yu and Hall Master Yang. She was a special disciple who had just joined Yuehua school, so she could only give him a gift that was more meaningful than a gift. Senior Sister Rain Spirit, you're too polite. I really like this gift. What Ling Xiao cared about wasn't the value of the gift, but the friendship. Who said that there couldn't be brotherhood between men and women. Dai Yuling, this girl, could become his best friend. Martial yuan grass is a medicinal herb that can only be cultivated by a plant martial spirit. This kind of grass doesn't exist in nature. Lan Yu said, Under 100 years, this grass doesn't have any special effects. However, once it's over 100 years old, martial yuan grass will become a treasure. It's a versatile grass that can replace all kinds of precious herbs in alchemy. So, I actually got a treasure. Ling Xiao smiled and said, You have to live for 100 years first. Work hard to reach the Transcendent Realm. Then you can increase your lifespan by 100 years. Lan Yu said. Ling Xiao secretly thought, 1 year in my mountain river world is equivalent to 100 years. So, as long as I cultivate this martial yuan grass in my body for a year, it can achieve the desired effect. However, he wouldn't say this out loud. After that, Ling Xiao personally cooked. He used 100-year-old ginseng, 100-year-old pheasant, 100-year-old garlic, 100-year-old velvet, and 100-year-old spices to make a big pot of ginseng, velvet, and chicken soup. After this pot of soup, Dai Yuling directly returned to her room to cultivate. The spirit qi was too abundant. She was probably going to break through soon. After all, Dai Yuling was already at the peak of the 8th layer martial vein. She wasn't far from breaking through. Old senior sister, I'll go back to my cave and use this smelting stone and transcendent body shaping pill. Ling Xiao also got up and said goodbye. Okay, you fought a big battle today. You're probably tired. Have a good rest. Come back tomorrow. This old man has something important to tell you. Old Hall Master Yang said mysteriously. Can't you tell me today? Ling Xiao asked curiously. No. All right then, I'll see you both tomorrow. On the same day, Ling Xiao returned to his cave. Although this place couldn't be compared to the cave of an inner disciple, it was still much better than an ordinary residence. He rested for a moment before consuming the transcendent body-shaping pill along with the remaining heaven essence bone-changing pill. With the advancement of his strength and the constant strengthening of his body, the medicinal strength he could withstand was also getting stronger. This was not a big deal. The originally ferocious medicinal strength in Ling Xiao's eyes had become gentle. It flowed through his meridians into his internal organs, seeped into his flesh and bones, and began to be absorbed. To give an inappropriate example, Ling Xiao's previous meridians were equivalent to a small river. If there was a flood, it would definitely break the riverbank. But now his meridians were equivalent to a large river. Even the small river's water had become a trickle. It was also because of this that the medicinal strength could enter his body so gently, as if it was a tonic. Even if the speed was very fast, it wouldn't cause much of an impact on him. If it were anyone else, they probably wouldn't be able to do it. If it were Dai Yuling or even Ming Tian, they would probably suffer a fate worse than death. Ling Xiao operated the superior gold grade defensive martial art, Heavenly Dragon Golden Body, combined with the quasi-gold grade inner force cultivation method, Snow Lotus Truth, to speed up the absorption of the medicinal strength. At the same time, he continued to strengthen his body. In the process of accelerating the absorption of the medicinal strength, there was only a slight numbness, and it still didn't hurt. Looking at his body with his soul, Ling Xiao could clearly see that his body was slowly being transformed by the transcendent body shaping pill. This kind of transformation was not only a transformation of the flesh and blood, but also deep into the cells. At the same time, he operated the mountain river martial spirit. From the mountain river martial spirit, a cool power naturally flowed out and combined with the energy of the transcendent body shaping pill, continuing to strengthen his body and transform his body. He had long discovered that the mountain river martial spirit could transform his body. Chapter 284. Before Ling Xiao fused with the mountain and river martial spirit, his aptitude was on par with Ming Tian and Lung Hao. However, after the transformation of the mountain and river martial spirit, he could clearly feel that not only had his martial arts aptitude soared, even his memory, perception, and so on had all improved. The mountain and river martial spirit did not feel like a simple auxiliary tool. It had gradually merged with Ling Xiao's soul. As the degree of fusion deepened, his body would continue to transform and improve in all aspects. The awakening of the mountain and river martial spirit was actually very sudden. It was triggered by the remnant scroll that his grandfather, Hong Qi, had given him. He now had some doubts. Was his grandfather, Hong Qi, really a beggar? Who were his parents? Ling Xiao's suspicions were not without basis. As his horizons broadened, he began to understand the terror of the mountain and river martial spirit. If Hong Qi was just an ordinary person, how could he have such a valuable thing? Forget it. Let's not worry about it for now. I need to increase my strength as soon as possible. One day, the answers to these questions will be revealed. He believed that Hong Qi would not harm him. Perhaps for some reason, there were some things that he could not tell him. Then he could only increase his strength to make Hong Chi believe that he had the ability to protect himself. Other than that, there was probably no other way. About 2 hours passed. Ling Xiao's entire body was actually excreted a layer of black and smelly viscous liquid. This kind of thing was the impurities in the body. It was not the first time he had seen it. Ling Xiao knew very well that this meant that his body had once again become closer to the body of an extraordinary being. His entire body and soul had been sublimated. In the true sense, he had been reborn. Combined with some of the things he had comprehended after the battle with Yang Qing and Li Anil, the accumulated strength erupted once again. His cultivation had also broken through to the middle of the 9th level of the martial vein. Of course, the external model was still the peak of the 8th level of the martial vein. He could be very powerful in battle, but his cultivation could not increase so quickly. Otherwise, it would be troublesome if he attracted the attention of the flame deity. He was no longer afraid of He Suo. If he didn't have the full support of Empyrean Demon Flame, then even if He Suo had 10 times the courage, he wouldn't dare to openly deal with him. After all, he now had a backer. As for the dirty tricks behind his back, he would just let them come. Ling Xiao was not good at other things, but he was best at making others suffer the consequences of their own actions. In fact, he had only digested less than 1/3 of the transcendent body-shaping pill's medicinal effect. If it were anyone else, they would have to consume all of their extraordinary body-shaping pills to achieve such an improvement. However, he only used 1/3 of it. This was all thanks to the mountain river martial spirit. With the existence of the mountain and river martial spirit, he would not waste the slightest bit of medicinal efficacy and could basically completely absorb it. Not only that, the special energy released by the mountain and river martial spirit could also increase the efficacy of the medicine. This was something that others could not do. As the strongest martial spirit, the mountain river martial spirit was definitely worthy of its role in assisting. As for combat, Ling Xiao hadn't tried it yet. Although he wanted to try it in order to avoid becoming the target of public criticism, he tried his best to suppress this desire. Unless it was a last resort, he would never use the mountain and river martial spirit to fight. Anyway, the rest of the martial spirits were enough. In addition, with the help of the transcendent body-shaping pill, the medicinal effect of the heaven essence bone-changing pill had been completely absorbed. This caused his almost stagnant heavenly dragon golden body to break through the shackles again and advance to the 4th level in one fell swoop. The 4th level of the heavenly dragon golden body could cultivate the heavenly dragon martial vein. In other words, if the martial vein in the body completely transformed into the heavenly dragon martial vein, not only would the true essence be more stored, but it could also completely transform the true essence into the heavenly dragon true essence. Now that he had broken through to the 4th level, the next thing to do was to completely transform the snow lotus true essence in his body except for the thunderbolt true essence and the fierce beast true essence. The level of the heavenly dragon true essence was much higher than the snow lotus true essence. Moreover, it would not erase the characteristics of the snow lotus true essence. It could be said that it was very wonderful. After the quality of the true essence improved, all of his martial skills would also greatly increase the attack power of his martial skills, allowing his strength to greatly increase compared to when he fought with Yang Qing. Obviously, if it was just the heaven essence bone-changing pill, it would be impossible to break through to the 4th level of the heavenly dragon golden body. At the very least, it would not be so fast. The biggest effect was the transcendent body-shaping pill given by Old Hall Master Yang. This was the Yuehua school, one of the 12 sects. The opportunities here were really much more than in the secular world. Just because of a victory in a challenge and a random pill given by a hall master, he was able to achieve such a breakthrough. It was really a pleasant surprise. The speed of improvement of defensive martial skills was originally slower than other martial skills. So many people were actually unwilling to waste time on it. In the entire outer sect, Those who really focused on defensive martial skills as their main means would not exceed 10 out of 1,000 people. And in the top 30 of the outer sect, there was only one person who focused on defensive martial skills as their main cultivation direction. He was Jin Ming. Even Ling Xiao did not focus on defensive martial skills. It was just that he was able to advance in all aspects. After the heavenly dragon golden body reached the 4th level, the degree of his body's toughness had already surpassed Jin Ming's. He had never lacked confidence, but in the past he really did not have the confidence to defeat Jin Ming. But now, the situation had changed dramatically. With his current strength, although defeating Jin Ming would not be easy, it was no longer impossible. He was now more concerned about who to defeat, but the next 2 levels of the Heavenly Dragon Golden Body. The Heavenly Dragon Golden Body only had a total of 6 levels. The 5th level was already very terrifying. At this level, he would be completely reborn. His entire body would be transformed and upgraded, and he would have the complete Heavenly Dragon blood. He could be reborn from a drop of blood and break through to the transcendent saint realm. There was still the last level, which was the 6th level, impervious to fire and water, indestructible Vajra, rebirth of the soul, and an indestructible body. What kind of realm was this? Ling Xiao was really surprised. Such a terrifying defensive martial skill was only a superior gold grade martial skill. Then, what realm would the Dragon Emperor's protection technique, which was even more terrifying than the Heavenly Dragon Golden Body, reach? He was really looking forward to it. Ling Xiao was now only at the 4th level of the Heavenly Dragon Golden Body, but his physical strength was already more powerful than that of a half-step master. It could be said that just by relying on his physical strength without any true qi, he could now kill an ordinary half-step master, and the opponent would not be able to hurt him at all. That was how strong he was. It might be too early to say that he was invincible under the Transcendent Realm. After all, the top 3 in the outer sect were not to be trifled with. But even if he was not invincible, he was in an invincible position. After continuing to cultivate for a while, the sky had already darkened. Chapter 285. Ling Xiao created 2 clones and continued to cultivate the Imperial Sword Technique Bronze Scroll and the Divine Prison King's Fist. Loss for his soul, it entered the Mountain River world. The smelting stone was placed in the Mountain River world. There was no one in the small town's weapon shop, but it had the youngest refining equipment. Ling Xiao found the equipment to fuse the equipment and then let his martial spirit clone operate it, placing the smelting stone, ice glass sword, and treasure spear into the equipment. This process was very simple, and anyone could do it. He didn't have to worry about the smelting after that. After the Mountain River martial spirit was activated, he only needed to consume some true essence, and the equipment would automatically operate. Ding dang! The smelting was complete. A brand new sword appeared in front of Ling Xiao. Compared to the previous ice glass sword, not only was it more beautiful, it also emitted a strange luster. A treasure sword was indeed better than the floating snow sword. During this period of time, unless he used 2 swords, the ice glass sword was hidden because there was no need for it. But now, after such a smelting, the ice glass sword that was about to be eliminated had regained a new life. Perhaps it was because of the Heavenly Dragon's true essence, but on the newly smelted sword, one could faintly see an ice dragon baring its fangs and brandishing its claws. I'll just call you Ice Dragon Sword. Although the name was a bit tacky, Ling Xiao wasn't going to sell art. It was fine as long as he used it. With such a weapon, he would be able to be on par with Jin Ming, because the top 10 outer sect disciples all had treasure artifacts. If he didn't, he would be at a disadvantage. Smelting the ice dragon's sword seemed simple, but it took a lot of time. After Ling Xiao finished, he realized that it was almost dawn. He withdrew his 2 clones and planned to rest for a while. Not to mention that he was only a martial vein realm cultivator. Even a transcendent realm cultivator needed to rest. It was just that he didn't have as much time as an ordinary person. Divine Prison King's fist actually comprehended a new move, soul snatching. It had to be said that the shadow cultivation secret technique had really helped him a lot. Without it, even if he could create a shadow clone, he wouldn't have been able to use it to cultivate. The most important thing now was to find a higher level secret technique that could replace the shadow cultivation secret technique as soon as possible. Otherwise, the effects of this doppelganger's cultivation would become worse and worse. The bronze sword manipulation art has also entered the 7th level, and it can be considered as having just entered the realm of mastery. Purely in terms of instantaneous lethality, this sword manipulation art is already close to flying snow. As long as it reaches the next level, this sword manipulation art will once again become my most powerful instantaneous lethality move. Ling Xiao had not used the sword manipulation technique in the previous battles. One of the reasons was that it was unnecessary, and the other reason was that he felt that his level of cultivation was not high enough to use it as a trump card. After taking a deep breath, Ling Xiao sat cross-legged on the stone bed and rested. The sun rose in the east, illuminating the moonlight pagoda. Ling Xiao opened his eyes and walked out of the cave. "Hello, Senior Brother Zhao." "Good morning, Senior Brother Zhao." "Senior Brother Zhao, you're going to the medicine hall." On the way to the medicine hall, Ling Xiao suddenly felt that whether it was the new outer sect disciples or the old outer sect disciples, all of them had become enthusiastic. What made him the most speechless was that even though they had entered the sect much earlier than him, they still called him Senior Brother. It was as if they couldn't show their respect for him if they didn't call him that. He really didn't like to deal with this kind of situation, so he casually said a few words and sped up. Once he sped up, no one could catch up to him. In the past, when he met outer sect disciples like Li Anil who were ranked in the top 30, they would definitely not give way to him. But today, when Li Anil and Lu Chang saw him coming from afar, they hurriedly stood on the side of the road, lowered their heads, and cupped their hands in greeting. This made Ling Xiao feel a little proud. After all, he was only 14 years old. To be able to make people who had once looked down on him so respect him was an achievement. Why couldn't he be proud? As for Yang Cheng, that guy was still lying in the infirmary and hadn't come out. Not long after, he arrived at the medicine hall. Old Hall Master Yang was sitting there reading a book. When he saw Ling Xiao, he stood up with a smile and said, "How is it? Did you rest well yesterday?" "What rest?" "Senior, the transcendent body shaping pill that you gave me is simply too useful. It has tormented me for an entire night, and it has greatly benefited me." Ling Xiao joked, but he was really touched by this old man. He wondered if he should just become Old Hall Master Yang's disciple. This old man was really good to him. But on second thought, although Old Hall Master Yang's status in Yuehua School was very high, his strength was still not as good as the Flame Deity. The Flame Deity didn't dare to deal with Old Hall Master Yang on the surface. But what if he did something bad behind his back? What a contradiction. "Old Hall Master Yang, you spoil this Ling Xiao too much. He didn't come to the medicine hall for most of the day yesterday." Suddenly, a middle-aged man in a green shirt next to him said very unkindly, "Qing Mu, as the deputy hallmaster, why are you arguing with a kid? There's no need." Old Hall Master Yang waved his hand and said, "I know you're the deputy hall master in charge of the discipline of the medicine hall, but Ling Xiao did have an urgent matter yesterday." "What urgent matter?" Qing Mu asked. "Is the challenge of the outer gate an urgent matter?" Old Hall Master Yang frowned and was a little unhappy. However, Qing Mu was obviously a straightforward person. He didn't care at all and continued, "There are too many challenges in the outer gate. If everyone asks for leave and doesn't come, how can the medicine hall operate? What if he challenges the quasi-inner disciples ranked in the top 30? Old Hall Master Yang narrowed his eyes and asked, "That's an exception. According to the rules, there's no problem. But him?" Qing Mu looked at Ling Xiao disdainfully and said, "He's only at the peak of the 8th level of the martial vein. The top 30 are all half-step masters. Who can he challenge? Haha, you really don't believe me. He not only challenged one, but two. One is called Li Anil, who seems to be ranked 26th in the outer gate. The other is Yang Cheng, who is ranked 10th. Old Hall Master Yang's face showed a little pride. The little guy, he thought, highly of had performed so well. There was nothing wrong with being proud of him. You lost miserably, didn't you? Qing Mu looked at Ling Xiao and asked. Reporting to Vice Hall Master Qing Mu, the potential inner sect disciple strength was stronger than I had imagined. I had to use all my skills before I was able to obtain victory. Ling Xiao said lightly. Haha, I knew you would lose. You said you won? Qing Mu obviously didn't expect such a result. He wasn't Old Hall Master Yang, so he didn't care what Ling Xiao did. He only cared that Ling Xiao asked for leave. Yes, I won. Ling Xiao nodded. Both of them? Yes. Many people went to watch the battle that day. If Deputy Hall Master Qing Mu doesn't believe it, you can ask Senior Sister Lan. She was there. Chapter 286. That's right. I can testify that Ling Xiao not only won, but he also defeated Li Anil, who ranked 26th, and Yang Cheng, who ranked 10th, in one move. Lan Yu came in from the outside, and her voice was full of unquestionable certainty. Novel, La, that's impossible. Qing Mu turned pale with fright. Nothing is impossible. Is Deputy Hall Chief Qing Mu doubting my attainments in martial arts? Lan Yu frowned. How dare I? Deputy Hall Master Lan's attainment in martial arts is not inferior to Hall Master Yang's. I dare not doubt it. It's just too surprising that a martial vein, LV8 martial vein, LV8 defeated a half-step master. Qing Mu looked at Ling Xiao as if he was looking at a monster. In addition, Vice Hall Master Qing Mu, Ling Xiao's challenge was agreed upon by Old Hall Master Yang and I. Does Vice Hall Master Qing Mu think that we don't even have this little bit of power? Lan Yu was not Hall Master Yang, so she would not give face to Qing Mu. Haha. Qing Mu smiled awkwardly. How could that be? Since that's the case, I have something to do, so I'll leave first. He hurriedly left the alchemy room as if he was running away. Yang and Lan, I have the flame deity to cultivate me. Sooner or later, I will be the new hall master of the medicine hall. At that time you will see. Qing Mu was furious when he left. As for Ling Xiao, he has offended me, so he will make things difficult for him. He was the vice hall master of the medicine hall. He was very clear about the rules of the medicine hall. He could use the loopholes in these rules to attack Ling Xiao. Even Old Hall Master Yang and Lan Yu would not be able to interfere. Old Hall Master Yang, you have to be careful. Qing Mu is very close to Mo Yen, and you know that Mo Yen has the wisdom bone. He is the most outstanding genius of the Yuehua school in the past 1,000 years. His martial soul is a little special, and even the headmaster is very indulgent of him. If he focuses on cultivating Qing Mu, you will be in trouble. Lan Yu's master was one of the grand elders of Yuehua school. She probably knew more about these secrets than Old Hall Master Yang. Ignore him. Old Hall Master Yang waved his hand and said, This old man has lived for so long and has seen everything. Mo Yan's aptitude is very outstanding, but his wisdom bone was stolen from someone else. It can't be completely integrated with his body. Sooner or later, something will happen. Forget it. Let's not talk about this anymore. Last Lan, please leave for a moment. I have some important matters to discuss with Ling Xiao. All right. Although Lan Yu felt strange why Old Hall Master Yang was so mysterious, since it was a secret, it wasn't good for her to stay. After Lan Yu left, Old Hall Master Yang directly called Ling Xiao to his cave mansion. This was the cave mansion of an elder, and the conditions were naturally better than that of an inner disciple. Just by taking a breath, he could feel his true qi increasing. Old senior, if you have something to say, this junior will keep it a secret for you. Ling Xiao said very seriously. This matter is about you, old man. You should talk to him. Old Hall Master Yang looked at the puppy on his shoulder and said, Ling Xiao, are you willing to worship me as your master? The puppy was very direct. It didn't have any opening remarks at all and asked directly, Wait, what's going on? A fierce beast that can speak human language? What kind of level is that? Ling Xiao knew that if a fierce beast could speak human language, it was at least equivalent to an expert in the celestial realm. It could even be called an immortal beast. Ordinary beast, monster beast, fierce beast, and immortal beast were equivalent to an ordinary person, a martial vein realm cultivator, a transcendent realm cultivator, and a celestial realm cultivator. What fierce beast? This senior's origin is a bit special, so it's not convenient for me to tell you now. Just tell me if you are willing to worship this senior as your master. Your respected Old Hall Master Yang was cultivated by this senior. The puppy said proudly, No way. Ling Xiao was even more shocked. Old Hall Master Yang smiled and said, Little guy, you don't want to worship this senior as your master because you are afraid that this senior's strength is not as good as the flame deity. However, this old man of mine is much stronger than the flame deity. He is just relying on this beast's body to recover. If you worship him as your master, you will never regret it. But what about you, old senior? Ling Xiao felt a little embarrassed. Ha ha ha. If you worship this old man as your master, you will be this senior's junior brother. Of course, only the three of us can know about this. No one else can know about this. Old Hall Master Yang laughed heartily. That's right. I haven't told you my name after such a long time. My surname is Yang, and my name is Yang Danlin. Our master, who is also my old friend, can be called Yuan Venerate. In that case, this disciple is willing to worship Senior Yuan Venerate as his master. Ling Xiao knew very well that someone respected by Yang Danlin definitely wouldn't be weak. Furthermore, this Yuan Venerate's strength was even stronger than the flame deities, so he wouldn't have to be afraid if he worshipped him as his master. Very well, this senior will accept you as his disciple today. You will be considered my third disciple. The first one is not worth mentioning. The second one is Yang Danlin. He is also considered a friend of mine. If it weren't for him, I would have died long ago. The third one is you, Yuan Venerate said. However, this senior is not a member of the Yuehua school, so you can call yourself Yang Danlin's disciple. This senior won't mind. This disciple understands. Very well, that's all for today. Given your current strength, I don't need to personally guide you. Danlin, help me impart knowledge on alchemy and medicine. You can also give him a few pointers on martial arts. If there are any problems that he can't solve, come to me. Yuan Venerate lay down and fell asleep again after he finished speaking. Ling Xiao, don't mind him. Yuan Venerate suffered a very serious injury. Furthermore, it was an injury to his soul, so he has to sleep frequently. Unless we are in danger, he generally won't make a move. Yang Danlin explained. This junior understands. He didn't mind. After all, he was only a martial vein martialist now. Regardless of whether it was martial arts or alchemy knowledge, Old Hall Master Yang Danlin's pointers were completely sufficient. All right, your next task is to continue strengthening your basic knowledge on pharmacology. Start learning advanced alchemy technique, advanced pharmacology, and fire manipulation technique. Yang Danlin didn't go to the medicine hall's library. Instead, he found these books in his cave abode. He was the hall master of the medicine hall, so this wasn't a problem for him. The other 3 books aren't difficult to understand. As for fire manipulation technique, it is slightly special. Yang Danlin explained. Fire manipulation technique only requires you to control the size of the flame and the duration of the flame. You also need to know when to use what kind of flame. Fire manipulation technique requires you to be able to control a variety of flames. Old senior, How many types of flames are there exactly? Chapter 287. There are many, but for an alchemist, you only need to master 12 types of divine flames. They are civil and martial sacred flame, samadhi true fire, sun crimson flame, extreme een cold flame, death dark flame, myriad spiritual flame, heavenly punishment flame, reincarnation heavenly flame, primal chaos ancient flame, life sacred flame, cosmic demon flame, and destructive flame. Jan Danlin replied, I need to remind you that it is impossible to completely master these flames because each type of divine flame is a type of martial spirit. No one can completely master 12 types of martial spirits, so most alchemists only borrow these flames. And even if you borrow them, you can only get the civil and martial sacred flame and samadhi true fire. As for the other 10 types of flames, to be honest, even I have never seen them with my own eyes. I have only seen them in books. In the next 2 days, Ling Xiao memorized the books that Yang Danlin introduced, including the Imperial Fire Technique, and digested and understood them. But there was a problem here. Even if he could understand the Imperial Fire Technique, he still needed to use it to control the flames. Yang Danlin's suggestion was to start with mortal flames. Mortal flames could actually be used to refine pills and medicine, but only materials under 100 years old could be used. The process of controlling mortal flames could be said to be similar to the 12 types of divine flames. It was just simpler, and controlling mortal flames did not require the martial spirit to cooperate. Ling Xiao only used 2 hours to condense a flame seed in his body. The flame seed looked like a small flame located in the martial artist's danton. Under normal circumstances, only alchemists and alchemists had them. The flame seed's final growth depended on the alchemist's final achievements. Generally speaking, the bigger the flame seed, the higher the alchemist's achievements. It was said that in ancient times there were top alchemists whose flame seed could grow into a sun seed. The flame in their body was like a red sun, very powerful. Of course, this was not the strongest. After all, a seed was only a seed. Some alchemists guessed in their own writings that a sun seed could eventually become a real sun. Although this was just a guess, it was a guess that followed a certain pattern. It wasn't a random guess. Ling Xiao was looking forward to the future of this flame seed. His flame seed was only about an inch long. It was so small that it seemed like it could be extinguished at any time. It was not even as bright as a candle. However, with this flame seed, he could achieve twice the result with half the effort when refining pills. This was for sure. Hearing that Ling Xiao could condense a flame seed in 2 days, Yang Danlin's old face was both happy and shocked. It was as if he did not know how to express it. How about this, since you've already condensed a flame seed? Then from tomorrow onwards, you'll learn alchemy from Little Lan. Remember, watch her every move carefully. Although Little Lan's proficiency in alchemy isn't as good as this old man's, her talent is very high, so her foundation is very solid. There won't be any harm in learning from her. Yang Danlin was usually too busy, and the alchemy techniques he was using now were very complicated. It was obviously not suitable for a person who had just entered the sect to follow and learn. Lan Yu, or was considered a transition. Ling Xiao naturally understood the reason behind his arrangement. Receiving Yang Danlin's request, Lan Yu, or didn't have the slightest complaint or refusal. This made Yang Danlin very surprised. After all, alchemy techniques were unique to alchemists and alchemists. Many things could not be divulged except to their own apprentices. Even if they taught their apprentices, they would not reveal it. After all, it was common for the master to starve to death when teaching his apprentices. However, Lan Yu did not hide anything from Ling Xiao. According to her, Ling Xiao's medical qualifications were obviously better than hers. Naturally, she wanted to cultivate him. However, Yang Danlin was an experienced and knowledgeable old fox. He saw a hint of other meaning in Lan Yu's eyes. But since Lan Yu did not say it, he did not point it out. For the next few days, Ling Xiao followed Lan Yu, or during the day to learn the detailed process of refining pills. At night, he continued to cultivate. Of course, others did not know that there were always two doppelgangers in his cave. Although the speed was not as fast as the main body, they did not waste time. His martial, soul doppelganger was in the mountain river world. He tried and perfected the alchemy techniques that Ling Xiao learned from Lan Yu, he gradually absorbed them and made them his own. Although Dai Yuling was Lan Yu's apprentice, she did not get Lan Yu's attention. Of course, Dai Yuling's main direction was not alchemy, but cultivating medicinal herbs. Dai Yuling's martial soul was very special. Every time she succeeded in cultivating medicinal herbs, her cultivation would improve. The more unique and outstanding the herbs she cultivated, the faster her cultivation would improve. This completely made up for her lack of martial arts aptitude, which surprised Lan Yu. Today, Dai Yuling was a martial vein, early stage, 9th layer martial master. Her cultivation was still improving. Ling Xiao occupied most of Lan Yu's time every day. He did not try it out because his martial soul doppelganger had done all the testing. What the martial soul doppelganger learned belonged to him. There was no doubt about it. During the learning process, Ling Xiao often asked some questions, which surprised Lan Yu, because these questions were not even noticed by her. Or maybe she was aware of them, but she could not solve them. In the end, Lan Yu was surprised to find that those ordinary alchemy techniques had been perfectly perfected by Ling Xiao. She became the one who asked questions and the one who was taught. After that, Lan Yu began to teach Ling Xiao her own alchemy techniques. His unique alchemy techniques were not simpler than Yang Danlin's alchemy techniques. Some of his creativity was even better than Yang Danlin's. But even so, Ling Xiao could still learn it easily in the state of soul immersion. Moreover, it did not just stay in his mind. His martial soul doppelganger had tried many things for him. Even if it was a unique technique, there were still some omissions. This was something Lan Yu could not do. She relied on her powerful ability to reduce mistakes as much as possible, but this method was difficult to promote. So Ling Xiao listed these omissions one by one and told Lan Yu his own opinion. Lan Yu was shocked. It could even be said that she was a little disappointed. However, she quickly tossed this feeling of disappointment aside. Because of the mutual learning with Ling Xiao, her alchemy techniques and pharmacology knowledge had improved by leaps and bounds. There were many things that were difficult to understand in the past, but after Ling Xiao's inadvertent hints, she suddenly understood. Now, she did not know who was the teacher and who was the student. Lan Yu really felt that her choice to teach Ling Xiao these things without reservation was really right. Ling Xiao not only did not disappoint her, but also benefited her endlessly. Lan Yu now found a way to refine pills that she could not refine in the past. Chapter 288. The benefits of learning alchemy from Lan Yu were not only the improvement of his alchemy skills. Novel! Lan Yu would give 1 or 2 of the elixirs she refined to Ling Xiao, so that Ling Xiao could temper his body and improve his cultivation when he returned to his cave residence at night. These dawn were not worth mentioning to Lan Yu. She could easily give them to Ling Xiao. However, for a martial vein realm warrior, these dawn were too precious to be bought even if they were willing to spend money. 7 days later, Ling Xiao had learned almost all of Lan Yu's skills. He even had his own unique opinions, which made Lan Yu unconvinced. At first, Lan Yu felt a little uncomfortable in her heart. After all, Ling Xiao was the top medical genius in the Yuehua school. But now he was easily surpassed by Ling Xiao. How could she not be happy about it? But as time passed, she gradually lost that feeling. She even felt a little happy. After all, a genius like Ling Xiao had learned alchemy and alchemy skills from her for so long. She could be regarded as half a master to him. If she needed Ling Xiao's help in the future, wouldn't it be very convenient? Besides, She had not been able to break through to the celestial realm because she had been distracted. Now that the medicine hall had Ling Xiao, she could put more energy into cultivation. In fact, since the 5th day, she had given some of the elixirs she refined to Ling Xiao. This showed her trust in Ling Xiao. At the same time, it was also to train Ling Xiao's alchemy skills. On this day, Qing Mu, the vice hall master of the medicine hall, came to the alchemy room with a very bad face. He questioned Lan Yuer as soon as he arrived. He asked why she had given some of the precious elixirs to Ling Xiao. He also said that there was a problem with the elixirs refined by Ling Xiao. Therefore, he wanted to punish Ling Xiao according to the rules of the medicine hall. Of course, this was a groundless accusation. The pills that Ling Xiao refined had been inspected by Lan Yu, and Old Hall Master Yang. Their quality was even better than the pills refined by the two of them. So, how could there be a problem? When Lan Yu was about to speak, Ling Xiao stopped her with a smile. Then he looked at Qing Mu and said, "Deputy Hall Master Qing Mu, are you sure there is a problem with the elixir I refined?" Naturally, could it be that this hall master would wrongly accuse you? Qing Mu said coldly. Haha, who knows? I heard that Deputy Hall Master Qing Mu is also good at refining elixirs. Is it because he thinks that my elixirs are better than yours that he is jealous and deliberately finds fault with me? With the support of Yang Danlin and Lan Yuer, Ling Xiao was not afraid of Qing Mu. You, don't talk nonsense, Qing Mu said angrily. Vice Hall Master Qing Mu, don't slander me. Ling Xiao said coldly, since Deputy Hall Master Qing Mu thinks that there is something wrong with the elixir refined by me, how about this? How about we openly concoct pills in front of the medicine hall's higher-ups and disciples? Let's compete and see whose elixir is better. I don't want to compete with you. Qing Mu snorted coldly. Qing Mu, haven't you always wanted to be the hall master of the medicine hall? Yang Danlin slowly walked in from the outside. He looked at Qing Mu with a smile and said, "Since that's the case, if you can defeat Ling Xiao in a public alchemy competition, this old man will hand over the position of hall master to you without any regrets." Senior, Old Hall Master Yang. Ling Xiao and Lan Yu were both surprised. Yang Danlin often came to the alchemy room recently and occasionally taught them how to refine elixirs. So he noticed the progress of Ling Xiao and Lan Yu. However, it was a little too risky for him to bet his hall master position with Qing Mu. Ha. Old Hall Master Yang, you must be joking. Although Qing Mu wanted to agree, he was afraid that Yang Danlin was deliberately testing him, so he did not respond immediately. What's wrong? Qing Mu, are you afraid? Yang Danlin sneered. You are an alchemist who has the civil and martial sacred fire seed and the civil and martial sacred fire martial spirit. Ling Xiao only has the mortal fire seed. You don't dare to bet with him? Qing Mu did not speak, but his face was a little red. Since you don't dare to bet with him, don't make trouble for no reason. I have personally checked Ling Xiao's elixir. If there is a problem with it, ask him to come to me. Yang Danlin suddenly raised his voice. Old Hall Master Yang, you can't be so protective, Qing Mu said with a pale face. Is this old man trying to protect his own today? What about it? Yang Danlin looked at Qing Mu and did not give him a way out. Good. In this case, you have to blame me. Yang Danlin, you said it yourself. If I win against Ling Xiao, you will hand over your position as hall master to me? Qing Mu's expression was a little ferocious. Perhaps because he was too angry, he had forgotten to be afraid and became rude. That's right. I said it. Good. Tomorrow at noon, we will officially compete in the Medicine Hall Square. Qing Mu said with a gloomy face. The requirement is very simple. Use the same materials to refine the same elixir. Whoever has the higher degree of perfection will win. No problem. Yang Danlin nodded. Qing Mu glared at Ling Xiao, and then there was a bit of contempt in his eyes. He did not believe that Ling Xiao could refine better elixirs than him. Ling Xiao had only been learning alchemy for a short time, and he only had the mortal fire seed. He was an experienced alchemist and had the powerful civil and martial sacred fire martial spirit, which was very helpful for alchemy. As for the so-called perfect elixirs refined by Ling Xiao, he always thought that Yang Danlin or Lan Yuer helped to refine them. Otherwise, wouldn't Ling Xiao be a real monster? He did not believe it. "Senior, you don't have to do that. I just want to compete with him here, so that he won't find fault with me. You've put a lot of pressure on me." After Qingmu left, Ling Xiao smiled bitterly, not confident. Yang Danlin asked with a smile, "How is that possible?" "It's good that you're confident. If you win this duel, you'll become an alchemist that the sect will focus on cultivating in the future. No one will dare to touch you. You'll even have experts protecting you. Qingmu won't be able to find trouble with you anymore. Isn't that good?" Yang Danlin wanted to settle this once and for all. Otherwise, if Qingmu came to Ling Xiao again and again, she was afraid that Ling Xiao would not have the energy to study. "All right then. Old senior, senior Sister Lan, don't worry. I will definitely exterminate this Qingmu." Ling Xiao revealed a resolute smile. The next day, the Medicine Hall Square was full of senior members and disciples of the Medicine Hall. There were many inner disciples here, which was different from the outer disciples' challenge. This time, it was not about martial arts or fighting, but alchemy. An alchemist who had just joined the sect for less than a month wanted to compete with an experienced alchemist who had been in the sect for decades. This was simply unheard of. "It's that Ling Xiao again." Chapter 289. What's wrong with him? An inner disciple asked, "Senior brother, you may not know, but this Ling Xiao once defeated the 26th and 10th outer disciple, the half-step master, with his cultivation at the peak of the 8th stage of the martial vein. He broke the record of the Yuehua school for 100,000 years. The old outer disciple replied, The element of chance is greater in the challenge of martial arts. However, alchemy is different. Alchemy requires proficiency and experience. It also requires an outstanding flame to complement it. Ling Xiao is playing with fire. His tail is already wagging to the sky." The inner disciple was also an apprentice of the Medicine Hall. Naturally, he knew how difficult alchemy was, so he didn't believe that Ling Xiao could defeat Qingmu. In fact, except for Yang Danlin and Lan Yuer, all the audience thought so. Even the 3 elders of the Medicine Hall, who were the judges, thought so. These 3 elders' cultivation and alchemy skills were on par with Yang Danlin's. However, they were a few decades older than Yang Danlin and were nearing the end of their lives. Nevertheless, they were still the treasures of the Yuehua sect. At the very least, there would be no problems with their judgment, so they would be very fair as the judges. Well, let's not waste any more time. You 2 can start now. Today, each of you will refine a set of dawn. Let's refine a high-grade true elemental dan. The materials have already been prepared, that's all. Whoever has the highest success rate and the highest perfection rate will be the winner. One of the elders announced the start of the alchemy. The high-grade true elemental dan was a low-grade elixir. It was not even qualified to be called a yellow-grade elixir. However, it was the best elixir for martial vein realm warriors to improve their internal force and cultivation. In the secular world, it was difficult to find a single elixir. This alchemy competition was about operation, not ability, so it was impossible to give Ling Xiao an elixir that he couldn't refine. After all, no matter how good Ling Xiao was, he was just a low-grade alchemist. He could only refine low-grade elixirs. If Ling Xiao could refine the same elixir better than Qingmu, then he would win. In terms of selecting materials, Ling Xiao's speed was obviously faster and more accurate. Even though the materials were already prepared, it was entirely up to them to decide how much to use or how little to use. If they used too much or too little, there would be problems. After selecting the materials, the 2 of them began to grind and roll the balls. Although this process was boring, it was necessary. After that, the two of them put the 20 life pills into the alchemy furnace almost at the same time. The life pill was a pill that had not been refined and did not possess the special effects of a pill. What came next was the key. Wow, it's the civil and martial saint fire martial spirit. Suddenly the onlookers exclaimed. Ling Xiao hadn't lit the fire yet. He turned to look at Qing Mu. A ball of flame appeared behind Greenwood. What was interesting was that half of the flame was incomparably ferocious, as if it could incinerate everything. The other half was very gentle, but it was obvious that the effect of continuous heating was better. In the process of alchemy, there was a saying that there was a difference between civil and military. The so-called gentle fire was the slow enhancement of power in the form of a thin stream flowing in a long stream. The so-called martial fire was the activation of a strong power. The civil and martial sacred fire had the characteristics of both civil and martial fires, and its effect was even more outstanding. It was very suitable to be used for alchemy. Ling Xiao glanced at it, then retracted his gaze and began to focus on his alchemy. Qing Mu's civil and martial sacred fire was indeed powerful, but it was enough to refine a low-grade, true essence pill. Ling Xiao had already refined a high-grade, true essence pill no less than 1,000 times in the Mountain River world, and had long since reached the point of perfection. The key was that the Mountain River world could simulate alchemy, and the process did not consume any materials. Of course, the refined elixirs could not be used. However, this process was almost no different from refining pills in the real world. Therefore, the pill refining techniques that Ling Xiao learned were all real, and there was nothing fake about it. However, Ling Xiao still encountered some small problems. He found that there was something wrong with his life pill. Generally speaking, the humidity, age, quality, and so on of the same batch of materials should be about the same. However, after refining the life pill, Ling Xiao suddenly found that the situation was wrong. His materials were too wet, as if someone had deliberately sprinkled water on them. In the crowd, two people were whispering to each other. Hee, that brat will lose for sure. His materials have been soaked by a special spring water. This kind of spring water has a very high ignition point, and ordinary fire can't evaporate it at all. His pill will never be able to be refined unless he uses one of the 12 divine flames. Well done. If Hall Master Qing Mu wins this time, then he will be the real Hall Master of the Medicine Hall. In the future, you won't have to do the hard work of transporting materials. You can cultivate by my side. The second person was none other than He Suo. He Suo had been looking for a way to deal with Ling Xiao, but for such a long time, Ling Xiao either returned to the cave or was with Lan Yu or Yang Danlin. He had no idea where to start. However, this time, Ling Xiao wanted to compete with Qing Mu in alchemy. He didn't know what was wrong with him. Hall Master Yang Danlin, even used his position as Hall Master as a bet. How could He Suo not seize this opportunity to trip up Ling Xiao? It was not that he didn't believe in the ability of Deputy Hall Master Qing Mu, but he felt that Ling Xiao had too many accidents. So, in order to be foolproof, he asked the people who transported the materials to do something to Ling Xiao's materials. Thank you, senior brother He Suo. He Suo smiled and looked at the square again. At this time, Yang Danlin and Lan Yu also noticed that something was wrong, because Ling Xiao, who was supposed to light the fire, didn't light it at this time. Instead, he sat there in a daze. With their vision, it was not difficult for them to find that there was something wrong with the materials. Old Hall Master, should we announce a pause? It will be troublesome if it goes on like this. Lan Yu asked nervously. Yang Danlin's face also showed a serious expression. He used his position as Medicinal Hall Master as a bet. It was impossible to say that he didn't feel any pressure, especially when he knew that Ling Xiao's materials had been tampered with. No, if we interrupt the competition now, others will think that we are cheating. Yang Danlin shook his head. He didn't want to interrupt the competition, but once it was interrupted, he would have no face to continue to be the medicinal hall master in the future. Even if it was found that someone had tampered with the materials, it would be his incompetence. It would have nothing to do with Qingmu. But if it goes on like this, we will lose. Lan Yu was a little anxious. Don't worry, let's wait and see. Anyway, the alchemy time of the high-grade Jinyuan Dan is half an hour. It's still early. Yang Danlin wiped the cold sweat on his forehead. His fate had been involved with Ling Xiao. Now he could only hope that Ling Xiao could solve the problem by himself. Would a miracle happen? Phew! Ling Xiao let out a long sigh and tried his best to calm himself down. Chapter 290. Ling Xiao had already analyzed that these materials were drenched by a special spring water, and this kind of spring water could not be evaporated by ordinary flames. Novel! If the water could not be evaporated, then the pill would not be able to take shape. What should he do? The method was very simple, and that was to use the God Flame. No, it didn't have to be the God Flame. As long as it was a flame of a higher grade than ordinary flames, it would suffice. Got it. Suddenly, a bright light flashed through his mind, and an idea instantly formed in his mind. Hence, he started to light the fire. There was a problem with the materials, so the following steps had to be done perfectly and absolutely could not be flustered. Whereas on the other side, Qingmu had already started to control the fire, and he could even smell a faint medicinal herb fragrance, which was emitted after heating. He turned his head and took a look. Under Qingmu's control, the civil and martial sacred flame was like an obedient slave, and the entire process was extremely smooth. But for some reason, Ling Xiao seemed to hear an indignant roar. It must be an illusion. He shook his head and no longer looked at Qingmu. He returned to his own pill furnace, selecting the materials, creating the life pill, and then lighting the fire. Lighting the fire sounded very simple, as if it just needed to be lit. However, it wasn't like that. Every kind of pill required a different flame size and temperature. For some high-grade pills, there were even more special requirements. Originally, the high-grade true elemental pill didn't have a high requirement on the flame, and it only needed ordinary flames. But after being drenched by the special spring water, it required a special flame to solve the problem. Ling Xiao took a deep breath and placed a special piece of spiritual charcoal into the furnace. Then he ignited this piece of spiritual charcoal. At this moment, the spiritual charcoal was still burning with ordinary flames. But no one noticed that Ling Xiao had quietly placed his hand beside the furnace, and a black flame seeped out from his palm. This flame was transformed from the wild beast's true essence, which Ling Xiao had swallowed. Previously, during the battle in Sky Cloud City, that wolf-shaped wild beast was able to produce this kind of black flame. Although this kind of flame couldn't be compared to the God Flame, but it was much higher grade than ordinary flames. A high-grade flame was naturally not easy to control. However, this was not a problem for Ling Xiao. With the ignition successful, the next step was also the most important step in the entire alchemy process, and that was to control the fire. Why did he want to learn fire manipulation? It was just that they could use it here. Ling Xiao had entered the soul imprint state. He was able to control all the changes happening inside and outside the pill furnace, including the amount of vicious beast true essence that was poured in. He had perfect control over everything. Fire controlling technique required the use of true essence to control and influence the flame. This was something that almost all alchemists and alchemists could do. It needs to be explained here that alchemy is much easier than alchemy. Alchemy is the most basic. Ling Xiao only learned the theory and skipped it. He learned alchemy directly. These two principles were the same. It was just that alchemy was more profound and more useful to martial artists. The minimum requirement for an alchemist was to be a martial master at the early 7th level of the martial vein. As for the alchemist, the requirements were even higher. Generally speaking, one had to be at the peak of the 9th level of the martial vein to begin. Ling Xiao was, of course, an exception. Under his control, the flame was very fierce at first. This was because the water on the pill had to be evaporated first. After about 10 breaths, the flame gradually decreased. At this time, it was necessary to slow down the flame. Otherwise, the life pill would be completely burned. After the water of the special spring evaporated, Ling Xiao took back the vicious beast's true essence and the black flame disappeared. In the following time, there was no problem relying on the ordinary flame. Lan girl, did you find it? Yang Danlin's face showed unconcealable joy. See what? Lan Yu's eyesight was not as experienced as Yang Danlin's. Ha ha ha, little Lan. You have to train your eyesight properly. Ling Xiao is actually hiding such a secret. It's truly shocking. This time, Qing Mu and that little fellow Heisua are going to suffer. Although Yang Danlin wanted to laugh out loud, the alchemy process was not over yet. She felt that it was better not to be too ostentatious. It was not too late to be happy when the final result came out. After a quarter of an hour, Ling Xiao smelled a trace of medicinal fragrance coming from the pill furnace. Through the pill furnace, he could even see that the life pill had gradually taken shape and was showing a golden luster. This was a sign that he was close to success. The closer he was to success, the easier it was to fail, because at this time, the flame must be controlled to a very precise degree. If there was a slight mistake, the furnace of pills may be directly destroyed. There was a loud noise coming from the side. It should be that Qing Mu's pill was about to be refined. He delayed too much at the beginning. At this time, half an hour was almost over. There was not much time left. But even so, he did not have the slightest distraction. He still carefully controlled the flame in the pill furnace. When to add the spiritual charcoal, there was not the slightest mistake. This kid's true essence is very strong. The special black flame just now consumed a lot of energy, but it seems that he didn't feel it at all. The more Yang Danlin watched, the more shocked he became. He originally thought that his judgment of Ling Xiao was already very high, but when he truly carefully observed Ling Xiao's pill refining process, it was still able to make people endlessly shocked. Whoosh! The noise sounded again. Qing Mu's pill was out of the furnace. After the lid of the pill furnace was opened, a dozen golden lights suddenly shot out, causing the scene to be filled with exclamations. I'll have to trouble the 3 elders to score. Qing Mu glanced at Ling Xiao proudly. He also noticed that the other party's materials were wet, but he did not have any thoughts of winning. Instead, he felt very relieved. After following the flame deity for so many years, he had learned the principle of doing things by all means to achieve his goal. Vice Hall Master Qing Mu is indeed formidable. His success rate has reached 100%. 20 high-grade, true elemental dawn have been completely refined, and among them there are even 3 spirit dawn with a 100% perfection degree. One of the elders said, "That's right. Among the remaining 17 pills, 10 of them are spirit pills with a degree of perfection nearing 90%. Their effects are about twice as strong. The other 7 are spirit pills with a degree of perfection nearing 80% to 90%. When a furnace of pills came out, the first thing to do was to judge whether it was defective, or finished. Among the finished products, there were 3 grades: qualified, excellent, and perfect. The effect of a perfect pill would be increased, and the degree of perfection was the degree of perfection of a perfect pill. Generally speaking, as long as an alchemist could refine a qualified pill, they would be considered to have passed. If they could refine an excellent pill, then the effect of all the pills would be increased by 10%. This was already considered an excellent alchemist. If they could refine a perfect pill, no matter what the degree of perfection was, they would be among the best alchemists. Chapter 291. The reason why Qing Mu dared to try to snatch Yang Danlin's position as the hall master of the medicine hall was because he had a certain amount of confidence and capital. Deputy Hall Master Qing Mu is really amazing. I'm afraid he's going to win this round. What do you mean by afraid? He's definitely going to win. No matter how excellent Ling Xiao is, he can only refine excellent elixirs at most. Can he refine perfect elixirs? Yeah, he's only been learning alchemy for less than half a month, right? That's right. So I suspect that old Hall Master Yang is tired of being the Hall Master of the Medicine Hall. So he deliberately gave the position to Deputy Hall Master Qing Mu. Hey, it seems that it's really possible. After Qing Mu's elixirs came out, there were all kinds of opinions. However, everyone had the same thought, that old Hall Master Yang would definitely lose this bet. He still wants to refine excellent elixirs. I think he's just going to refine a furnace of defective elixirs. He Sua sneered. He had already stood up and was ready to leave. The reason why he didn't leave was purely because he wanted to see Ling Xiao's embarrassed look. The more unlucky Ling Xiao was, the happier he was. No matter how the surrounding environment changed, Ling Xiao was still immersed in his alchemy. From the moment he started to refine elixirs until now, it had only taken him a little more than a quarter of an hour, which was much shorter than Qing Mu's. It was a pity that he had wasted too much time before, so he finished later than Qing Mu. However, it was almost time now. Ling Xiao calculated the time and then slowly withdrew the true essence that was being transferred. The flame in the alchemy furnace gradually extinguished, leaving only a trace of residual heat to remind people that the elixirs had just been refined here. Look, Ling Xiao's elixirs are also out. It was not known who shouted, but it attracted the attention of many people towards Ling Xiao. Ling Xiao took a deep breath, slowly reached out his hand, and opened the lid of the alchemy furnace. In that instant, as many as 20 rays of golden light shot out. Not only that, but this golden light was even more dazzling than Qing Mu's pill. The final time to open the furnace was actually very crucial. If it was too early, the life pill would not be able to fully mature. If it was too late, it might be burnt or even cause the life pill to explode. The most frightening thing was that the cauldron might even explode, resulting in an irreparable disaster. This kind of thing had happened before. In fact, similar things had happened several times in Yuehua School. The medicine hall's alchemy room had been destroyed many times. Elders, please give your marks. Ling Xiao stood up respectfully and cupped his hands toward the 3 elders of the medicine hall. The 3 elders had no enmity with him. At most, they felt that he was a little arrogant, but this did not affect their grading. The 3 of them arrived in front of Ling Xiao's alchemical furnace. They couldn't help but reveal a look of surprise on their faces. This kind of expression had never appeared on their faces, even when they were examining the pills inside the greenwood alchemical furnace. The onlookers were very nervous. Because the golden light just now was too dazzling, many people who originally looked down on Ling Xiao began to feel uncertain in their hearts. Good heavens, 20 pills. All of them are finished products, and all of them are perfect pills. One of the elders said loudly with a very surprised tone, "It's not just good. These 20 medicinal pills have all reached a perfection level of 100%. Is this really a pill refined by a new apprentice alchemist?" Another elder was also surprised. "This is incredible. This old man has been refining pills for so many years, but I have never seen pills with such an outstanding degree of perfection. The effect of these 20 high-grade true elemental pills is simply comparable to a qualified top-grade true elemental pill. Do you believe that an alchemy apprentice can refine low-grade yellow-grade pills?" The 3rd elder was holding a pill in his hand, and his beard was trembling with excitement. Qing Mu was obviously shocked. His face had turned pale without the slightest trace of blood. He was obviously frightened. "No, I don't believe it. How is this possible?" He hurriedly rushed over and looked at Ling Xiao's 20 perfect high-grade true elemental pills. His eyes were filled with confusion and despair. He Sua also fell into a state of stupor. The disciple next to him who was transporting the alchemy materials was trembling all over. This guy probably already knew what was going to happen to him. The 3 elders looked at Ling Xiao with astonishment. Their expressions were filled with doubt and disbelief. That kind of expression was really complicated. "Young man, did you really just learn alchemy?" An elder asked. "Elder, this disciple's current cultivation is only at the peak of the 8th level of the martial vein. Even if I wanted to refine pills, I wouldn't be able to. After joining the Yuehua school, I learned alchemy from Old Hall Master Yang and Senior Sister Lan. Is there anything wrong with that?" He had nothing to be afraid of. In this world, there were many geniuses. It wasn't strange for someone like him to appear. No, there's nothing wrong with that. We're just asking. We're really surprised." No wonder Yang Danlin dared to bet his position as the hall master of the medicine hall. It turns out that he knew what was going on. After saying that, the elder who had lived for almost 200 years glared at Yang Danlin, as if he was complaining that Yang Danlin didn't inform them in advance, causing them to lose their composure. Yang Danlin also smiled bitterly. He knew that Ling Xiao was outstanding, but he didn't expect Ling Xiao to be so outstanding. "Well, let's announce that Ling Xiao has won the alchemy competition. Vice Hall Master Qingmu, do you admit defeat?" Yes. How could he not admit defeat? The 3 elders were here. If he dared to say anything, he would be kicked out of the medicine hall and even be expelled from the Yuehua school. "Well, since you admit defeat, it's fine. From now on, you're not allowed to suppress Ling Xiao. If the 3 of us find out, you won't be able to stay in the Yuehua school anymore." The 3 elders were not fools. They could see that Ling Xiao was very talented in alchemy. Although he was not as good as Qingmu now, it wouldn't be long before he became the best alchemist in the Yuehua school. There was no problem in abandoning Qingmu for such a precious treasure. "Elders, please understand. I didn't use any excuse to suppress Ling Xiao. Although Qingmu was the vice hall master, his status and seniority couldn't be compared to the 3 elders, so his attitude was especially respectful." "That's enough. We know what you did. We just didn't want to embarrass you. Aren't you going to reflect on yourself?" One of the elders shouted coldly. Qingmu's face instantly turned pale. He felt that he was too naive. He thought that no one knew what he did. Who would have thought that everyone knew what he did? They just didn't care about it because it was too small. "I admit my mistake." Qingmu lowered his head and said, "It's not enough to admit your mistake. We have discussed your position as the vice hall master for the time being. If you perform well in the future, you can be promoted again. That's all." Chapter 292. After the alchemy duel, Qingmu was removed from his position as vice hall master, and the disciple who carried the materials was directly expelled from the Yuehua school. This punishment was not light. Ling Xiao was too lazy to care about these things. He just wanted a quieter cultivation environment. Since the medicine hall had dealt with this matter fairly, he would not pursue it. However, because of this matter, Qingmu had an extremely vicious idea in his heart. He couldn't do anything to Yang Danlin. He couldn't do anything to Lan Yu. He couldn't do anything to Ling Xiao either. But dealing with Dai Yuling was a piece of cake. He didn't know where he heard that Ling Xiao and Dai Yuling were senior sister and junior brother, so he didn't hesitate to tempt them with spirit pills. He made Jin Ming, who was ranked 3rd in the outer sect, 5th in Tuobashan, and 6th in Gongyang Nu agree to help him secretly. He couldn't do it himself because, after this incident, he had been watched closely. However, Jin Ming, Tuobashan, and Gongyang Nu had a lot of time. These 3 half-step grandmasters wanted to break through to the transcendent realm, so they didn't care whether this was appropriate or not. Anyway, it was just dealing with a little girl. It was no big deal. Ling Xiao didn't know Qingmu's plan. After the alchemy duel, he also received a reward. He could take away all the 20 high-rank true elemental pills he refined. Although he refined them, the materials were from the sect, and they were very expensive. At the very least, it was not easy for him to gather them. So, this could be considered a generous gift. In order to celebrate the victory, Yang Danlin gave Ling Xiao a 3-day holiday. Of course, she said it was a holiday, but in fact, she gave him books on basic pharmacology and alchemy so that he could read them in his free time. Ling Xiao returned to his cave house and put the books aside first. He obtained 20 high-rank true elemental pills, which were equivalent to the best quality true elemental pills. With these pills, it should be easy for him to break through again. He directly took 10 high-rank true elemental pills in one breath. This time, the cultivation time was a little longer. It lasted for 7 days. Ling Xiao's cultivation had directly advanced to the peak of the 9th layer martial vein. Next, he needed to accumulate strength and prepare to break through to the transcendent realm. However, the gap between the peak 9th layer martial vein and the transcendent realm was not so easy to cross. When one's strength accumulated to a certain extent, one could become a half-step master. If the peak of the 9th layer martial vein to the transcendent realm were divided into 10 stages, then a half-step grandmaster was equivalent to accumulating more than 90% of this strength. Ling Xiao, on the other hand, hadn't even reached 10% yet. Although Yang Danlin only gave him 3 days off, he had no choice but to cultivate in seclusion. He believed that Old Hall Master Yang would understand. During the few days he was in seclusion, the other disciples in the sect also had their own encounters. After all, including the past 7 days, he had joined Yuehua school for almost a month. Many things would change over such a long period of time. Zhao Ji was the one with the highest cultivation from the beginning, so he was now a half-step master. Su Ying was slightly inferior. She was at the peak of the 9th layer martial vein and had accumulated about 60 to 70% of her strength. These two were the most talented, and their progress was the fastest. Zhao Ci was slightly inferior. She was only at the mid-9th layer martial vein. However, Dai Yuling's situation was special. Although her talent was not as good as Zhao Ci's, her cultivation method was special. She was currently at the mid-9th layer martial vein. Such a terrifying cultivation speed was absolutely unimaginable in the secular world. However, in the sect, this was nothing. After all, the 9th layer martial vein was just the beginning. Su Ying was currently a disciple of the flame deity. It was said that Ming Tian had pulled the strings. They were like-minded and regarded Ling Xiao as a thorn in their side. Zhao Ji and Zhao Ci were also disciples of an elder from the Northern Han royal family. However, they were still considered outer disciples, similar to Ling Xiao's situation. Their cultivation speed was not slow, but Ling Xiao's cultivation speed was even more terrifying. However, Ling Xiao was still using the peak of the 8th layer martial vein. He did this because he did not want to attract the flame deity's attention. In any case, his cultivation was more or less enough in the outer sect. Unless he was against the top 3 disciples, he did not need to use the strength of the 9th layer martial vein. During this period of time, he did not deliberately cultivate the heavenly dragon golden body. In any case, he was still slowly absorbing the extraordinary body-shaping pill. Even if he did not deliberately cultivate, his physical fitness was still constantly changing. When he reached a certain level, he would naturally try to break through. All of this was within his calculations. He would not waste any time. After all, his time was very precious. He wondered how Cold Plum and Wu Xiang were doing. When Ling Xiao thought of his 2 friends, he sighed in his heart. Now he could only wish for them to be safe and sound. In the sect, the competition was fierce. It was much more fierce than in the secular world. Even an outer disciple like Wu Xiang, who was ranked first from the bottom, would definitely be an expert in the secular world. But here he was only at the bottom. This was only the situation of the outer sect. There were probably more geniuses and strong people in the inner sect. This point could be seen from Lan Yu. She was only 2 years older than him, but her cultivation was already at the 9th layer martial vein. This was simply unimaginable in the secular world. Mingtian, Su Ying, and Leng Hao were now considered to have entered the inner sect. They could cultivate the martial arts of the inner sect disciples and receive guidance from stronger martial artists. This was definitely a huge advantage. He, Zhao Ji, Zhao Xi, and Dai Yuling could be considered to be relatively lucky. Although they were still in the outer sect, they still received some benefits. However, this was not enough. As an outer sect disciple, even if you were to become a disciple of an elder, as long as the elder did not agree to let you enter the inner sect, you would still be an outer sect disciple and would not be able to cultivate the inner sect's martial arts. It wasn't without reason that Ling Xiao had always insisted on raising his cultivation base and prioritizing the improvement of his cultivation base. If you were one step behind others, you would be left far behind. Therefore, not only did he have to build a good foundation, he also had to try his best to catch up or even surpass his competitors. Otherwise, he would not be able to survive, let alone become strong. Others might feel that this was very contradictory. But Ling Xiao's situation was special. His cultivation broke through very quickly, but his foundation was already very solid. His true qi, physical fitness, and soul strength were already comparable to a transcendent realm cultivator. Therefore, he did not care about the negative effects of breaking through too quickly because this effect did not exist for him. After coming out of seclusion, Ling Xiao went to find Yang Danlin. "You little brat, I gave you 3 days off, but you actually went into seclusion for 7 days. Your cultivation still hasn't broken through. I really don't know what you are doing." Chapter 293. Brother Yang, you made a mistake this time. The Yuan Venerate suddenly spoke. Made a mistake? Yang Danlin didn't understand. This kid's cultivation has already broken through to the peak of the 9th level of the martial vein. But I don't know what kind of special martial arts he cultivates, but he can hide his true cultivation. Even you can't see it. I only saw it because I have the eye of truth. The Yuan Venerate explained. Yang Danlin looked at Ling Xiao, her face filled with shock. Master, Senior, I hope that the two of you won't tell anyone about this. Disciple did this purely because he didn't want to attract the jealousy of others, especially since the flame deity has a grudge against my master, Master Baiyun. Therefore, I can only keep a low profile for now. Ling Xiao smiled bitterly. Don't worry, we won't speak carelessly. However, sky human-grade powerhouses generally possess special mystic abilities. Although mystic abilities like the Eye of Truth are very rare, we can't rule out the possibility of similar methods of seeing through your cultivation base. The Yuan Venerate reminded him. Powerhouses of the heaven tier wouldn't pay attention to a nobody like me, Yi Fuqian said. Of course. Ling Xiao knew that Yuan Venerate's words were true. However, he wasn't worried. Unless his cultivation base advanced to the transcendent grade, Yuan Venerate Demon Flame might pay attention to him. Otherwise, Yuan Venerate Demon Flame would have many other things to do. Why would he waste time observing a nobody like him? Furthermore, there was a 90% chance that the flame deity's ability wasn't something similar to the Eye of Truth. All right, let's not talk about this anymore. I called you here today to give you this immemorial divine pill scripture. Yang Danlin took out a book and handed it to Ling Xiao. The book wasn't very thick, but it had clearly been created using a special sealing technique. If it was fully opened, it probably wouldn't be able to fit in a 500 square meter house. This is the lifetime work of our master, Yuan Venerate. I originally planned to pass it on to you after a few years, but your aptitude in medicine is simply astonishing. Therefore, I discussed it with Yuan Venerate Master and decided to pass it on to you as soon as possible. This way, you can achieve greater results on the path of alchemy as soon as possible. Ling Xiao carefully took the book. This was the lifetime work of a Yuan Venerate. Many thanks, Master. Many thanks, Senior. Ling Xiao bowed deeply and said solemnly, This book is not only your master's painstaking effort. In fact, when your master was young, he had taken many outstanding alchemists as his master. This book is the painstaking work of over 100 top-notch alchemists. Not only does it contain profound alchemy techniques, it also contains many unique insights. You must treasure it. Yuan Venerate reminded him. Master, don't worry. I will cherish it. All right, the matter of refining pills ends here. Next, I will personally impart to you the art of refining formations. Yuan Venerate suddenly said. Method of refining formations? Ling Xiao was stunned. He had only heard that there were arrays in this world, and these arrays required some materials to be arranged. What was the method of refining arrays? He had heard of weapon refinement before. Yes, the art of refining formations. Yuan Venerate explained. You should know that weapons, defensive equipment, hidden weapons, and the like can be embedded with arrays to produce special effects, right? I have heard of this before. Ling Xiao nodded. The art of refining formations is to create all the arrays and arrays through refining methods and seal them in an array refining stone. When used, you only need to refine the array refining stone and the weapon together to produce special effects. Furthermore, if you want to set up an array, you can also use an array refining stone to do so, Yuan Venerate explained. The Yuan Venerate continued to explain. Therefore, the foundation of refining array formations is learning about arrays and array formations. However, I believe that this shouldn't be too difficult for you. Your photographic memory should allow you to easily remember almost all existing arrays and array formations, right? As long as you remember them, your master will personally impart to you the art of refining formations. Yang Danlin couldn't help but chide Ling Xiao when he saw how calm he was. You really don't know how amazing this is. This art of refining formations was learned by Yuan Venerate from the immortal court continent, the highest level of the mystic realm. There are many array refinement masters there, but your master is one of the most outstanding. This method doesn't even exist in the Sky Dragon continent. So amazing! That's natural. Refinement masters on the Sky Dragon continent can only carve inscriptions or embed special gems to enhance the effects of the weapons. However, this is only the most basic stage of art of refining formations in the immortal court continent. There is no technical content, and it is a waste of resources. Yuan Venerate explained. Do you understand now? Your disciple understands. Your disciple is willing to learn. Ling Xiao had actually been in a daze just now because he was guessing Yuan Venerate's identity. Not only was he a powerful alchemist, but he was also a powerful array refinement master. What exactly was his master's background? It's good that you understand. In the future, you will still belong to the medicine hall. However, you can learn art of refining formations from your master in private. In order to let you know the benefits of art of refining formations better, you can go to the sex market and buy some array refining stones, Yuan Venerate said. Yuan Venerate explained. Master, didn't you say that art of refining formations didn't exist in the Sky Dragon continent? Why are there array refining stones? Ling Xiao asked in confusion. Array refining stones are a relatively common gemstone in the Sky Dragon continent. Although they are considered relatively expensive, one low-grade spirit stone can buy 10 array refining stones. Because these stones don't have any attributes, they are generally used by martialists in the Sky Dragon continent to store quintessential origin stones. What a waste, Yuan Venerate explained. In the Sky Dragon continent, they are called quintessential storage stones. You can just buy low-grade, quintessential storage stones. All right, your disciple understands. However, senior, where is the Yuehua School's market? Ling Xiao had been at the Yuehua School for a month and had basically been walking around the outer sect and the medicine hall. He hadn't really gone anywhere else. Go find it yourself. Yang Danlin glared at Ling Xiao. Ling Xiao chuckled, thinking that it was true. If he couldn't even find it in the sex trading market, how could he survive outside in the future? Yuan Venerate and Yang Danlin didn't give him any spirit stones to buy array refining stones. However, this wasn't a problem since he didn't need much anyway. If he could successfully refine an array, he only needed one array refining stone. Considering the possibility of failure, he planned to buy 10 array refining stones. They were only worth one low-grade spirit stone, so it wasn't much of a burden to him. By the time he reached the sect, spirit stones had already become the standard unit of currency, while silver and gold had become a relatively common resource. Spirit stones were also used for refining pills, medicines, and equipment. However, they weren't as valuable as they were in the secular world. In the sect world, tens of millions of silver could only be exchanged for one low-grade spirit stone. Gold was slightly more valuable, but 100,000 gold could only be exchanged for one low-grade spirit stone. Chapter 294. Generally, people wouldn't tease you for something as trivial as asking for directions. So, Ling Xiao quickly found the way to the trading market. This trading market was generally a place for internal transactions in the Yuehua school. Of course, sometimes there were outsiders, but that was a special case. The moment he arrived at the trading market, Ling Xiao was very surprised. An outer sect disciple like him, even a half-step grandmaster, was only doing menial work here. Those who could take out spirit stones to buy things were mostly inner sect disciples, and they were all above the transcendent realm. He used to think that there were too few masters in the Yuehua school, but when he came here, he understood that he was really a frog in a well. In this place, one would be able to meet 8th or 9th layer transcendental realm disciples, vice hall masters, elders, and other experts just by casually walking around. Fortunately, it was not allowed to casually release one's aura here. Otherwise, Ling Xiao probably wouldn't be able to stay here, and those outer sect disciples who were working here would faint one by one. Was he an ant? Ling Xiao smiled. He admitted that he was indeed an ant now. But it didn't matter who didn't start out as an ant. So what if he was in the transcendent realm? So what if he was in the heaven realm? He believed that he would be able to reach it soon. Of course, seeing this scene, Ling Xiao's desire to improve his cultivation became even stronger, and his determination to cultivate became even more firm. Especially those 9th heavenly layer transcendent realm and heaven realm masters, who could casually take out high-rank spirit stones to trade. He was really envious. The trading market was actually not much different from a market in the secular world. It was mainly divided into 2 types, stalls and shops. As long as you paid a certain amount of rent, you could sell things here. Of course, the rent could only be spirit stones, and it had to be paid to the person in charge of the trading market. Although the person in charge was only at the 9th heavenly layer, he had a lot of power. Ling Xiao walked around for a while and found that although this was only an internal market of the sect, there was a very wide range of goods. There were fresh vegetables, fruits, meat, and so on from the secular world, which could be bought with silver or gold. There were also vegetables and fruits that were rich in spiritual energy planted by the sect, as well as the meat of spirit beasts bred by the sect. Of course, this could only be purchased with spirit stones. Not only was it delicious, but it was also very helpful for practicing martial arts. There were also various weapons refined by the armament hall, various pills refined by the medicine hall, and some materials for refining weapons and pills. Of course, there were also some secret martial arts manuals that were allowed to be traded in the sect. These secret martial arts manuals were relatively common and were very common outside, but their grades were not low. There were quasi-gold grade martial arts and even entry-level gold grade martial arts. However, the price was a little too high. Anyway, Ling Xiao really couldn't afford it for the time being. Of course, he found a good way to make money. The prices of alchemy materials here were relatively cheap, but the prices of medicinal pills were almost all very high. He did a rough calculation and found that the difference was almost 10 times. For example, if he were to refine a high-grade true elemental dan, all the materials would only cost 10 low-grade spirit stones, but the refined high-grade true elemental dan would cost 100 low-grade spirit stones. Even so, this thing was still often out of stock. As for the low-grade yellow-grade spirit dan, extraordinary body shaping Dan, it was worth more than 10,000 low-grade spirit stones. Ling Xiao was considered to have a lot of spirit stones among the outer sect disciples, but now he only had 300 low-grade spirit stones. He couldn't even afford such a medicinal pill. Moreover, the 10,000 low-grade spirit stones was just the price. Some people, in order to compete for this thing, bid 30 to 40,000 low-grade spirit stones. Currently, Ling Xiao was still unable to refine high-grade Dan. However, even if it was a low-grade true elemental Dan, it was still very valuable. He thought about it. This was really a very good way to make a fortune. No wonder others said that there were two kinds of people who were the richest in the sect. One was the alchemist, the other was the refiner. He first spent 1 low-grade spirit stone to buy 10 refining array stones, then used the remaining 300 low-grade spirit stones to buy the materials for refining high-grade true elemental Dan. In this way, refining 30 high-grade true elemental Dan shouldn't be a problem. In any case, his success rate was 100%. As long as no one disturbed him, he basically wouldn't fail, so there was no problem of wasting materials. He didn't need to buy the spiritual charcoal or the pill furnace. In any case, he was a disciple of a Yuan Venerate, so borrowing the spiritual charcoal and pill furnace from the medicine hall wasn't a problem at all. It was said that the spiritual charcoal could only be used to refine low-grade medicinal pills. If he wanted to refine a better high-grade medicinal pill, he would have to use better fuel. Of course, this wasn't something Ling Xiao needed to consider for the time being. It was enough for him to refine low-grade medicinal pills. The so-called high-grade medicinal pills were actually just 4 grades: heaven, earth, black, and yellow. Each grade was divided into 5 smaller grades: low-grade, mid-grade, high-grade, top grade, and transcendent grade. Low-grade medicinal pills were also divided into 5 grades. The high-grade true elemental Dan belonged to the transcendent grade of the low grade, which was considered pretty good. At the very least, it was considered a top-grade medicinal pill in the secular world. Even in the sect, it was an excellent medicinal pill for outer sect disciples. Even experts in the first 3 levels of the transcendent realm needed this relatively cheap medicinal pill to replenish their true essence. Therefore, it wasn't a problem to sell it. In addition, he spent all the silver he had on him and bought some materials to refine the Martial Vein Body Sculpting Pill. He roughly calculated that he could refine about 10 pills. The Martial Vein Body Shaping Pill was also a low-grade, transcendent grade medicinal pill. It had the same effect as the transcendent body shaping pill, but its effect was much worse. Furthermore, it could only be used by Martial Vein realm martialists. The selling price of this medicinal pill was about 100 low-grade spirit stones, but the purchase of materials was a little cheaper than the materials for the high-grade true elemental Dan. The cost of materials for 1 pill was only 8 low-grade spirit stones. After buying the items, Ling Xiao turned and left. Although he wanted to stay here for a little longer, it didn't make much sense. It would just be a waste of time. Ling Xiao, who would have thought that as soon as he walked out of the trading market, he would hear someone calling him. He looked up and saw that it was Su Ying, who hadn't shown her face in the outer sect for a long time. Su Ying was accompanied by another person, Ming Tian. At this time, both of their clothes were obviously embroidered with the insignia that only inner sect disciples were qualified to wear. It was too obvious. Su Ying, I haven't congratulated you yet. You've actually hugged the flame deity's thigh. It seems that your cultivation has also improved a lot. Ling Xiao ignored Ming Tian and looked at Su Ying indifferently. Bah! Nothing good comes out of a dog's mouth. What a nasty mouth. Su Ying scolded. By the way, you're just an outer sect disciple. What are you doing in the trading market? Could it be that you're no longer working in the medicine hall? So you came to the trading market to look for work? Chapter 295. Haha, I'm afraid I'll have to disappoint you. This one was ordered by Old Hall Master Yang to come to the exchange market to buy some things. Thank you for your concern. I'm living quite well in the medicine hall. Ling Xiao smiled faintly. Junior brother Ling, is Bai Yun well? Ming Tian suddenly asked. This is... Ling Xiao deliberately pretended to be confused. He really despised Ming Tian's character. Although this person's talent was amazing, the things he had done that day still made him feel disgusted. Haha, it seems Junior brother Ling is still angry about what happened that day. As Ming Tian spoke, he suddenly released his aura, and a terrifying pressure directly swept towards Ling Xiao. First layer, Transcendent Realm. Ling Xiao was taken aback. However, after thinking about it for a moment, he understood. Ming Tian's aptitude was originally good, and with the flame deity's cultivation, it was normal for him to break through to the first layer, Transcendent Realm. After all, Ming Tian's cultivation in the secular world was much higher than Ling Xiao's. He's about to break through to the second layer. Su Ying interjected. Now you understand why Ming Tian abandoned Old Man Bai Yun. Following that guy has no future. Humph. If he just chose to leave, I could understand. But he shouldn't have attacked Master Bai Yun. Ling Xiao coldly snorted and circulated his mountain and river martial spirit, instantly dispersing Ming Tian's terrifying aura. Wanting to suppress him with just one's aura was not an easy task. The strong are respected. There's nothing much to say. If you see Bai Yun again, tell him for me that he shouldn't think about being enemies with Master Devil Flame. If Master Devil Flame wants to kill him, it'll be like crushing an ant. Ming Tian said coldly. Not being able to suppress Ling Xiao with his aura surprised him a little, but the gap in cultivation allowed him to calm down and look at Ling Xiao condescendingly. You'd better tell him yourself. Ling Xiao said indifferently. I don't have that much free time. You want to cultivate? You only have a treasure body, so what if you work hard? In the past, your cultivation was much weaker than mine. Now, not only has the gap not been closed, it has become even wider. Don't you feel despair? Ming Tian said with a hint of mockery. Hee, maybe, but you better run faster, or I'll catch up to you soon. Ling Xiao smiled faintly. Ming Tian used to be very arrogant, and now that he had become the flame deity's disciple and had broken through to the transcendent realm, it was normal for him to be even more arrogant than before. Ha ha ha, then I'll wait. Ming Tian laughed and said to Su Ying, Junior sister, let's go. Su Ying turned around and glared at Ling Xiao. You can't even catch up with me now, and you want to catch up with senior brother Ming Tian? You're overestimating yourself. Really? Ling Xiao smiled as he watched the two of them leave. Don't worry, your senior brother Ming Tian will be trampled under my feet very soon. When they returned to the medicine hall, Ling Xiao handed the array refining stone to the Yuan Venerate. The Yuan Venerate gave him a few books, Array Basics, Array Applications, and Array Material Science. Take them back and read them first. Look for me after you're done. The Yuan Venerate fell into a deep sleep after saying that. He obviously couldn't stay awake for too long. Otherwise, he wouldn't be able to hold on. Ling Xiao took the books and returned to his cave abode. Of course, before he left, he took a pill furnace and some spiritual charcoal from the medicine hall. As long as Yang Danlin nodded, no one would dare say anything about such a small matter. After returning to his cave abode, he split into two clones. One of them studied the immemorial divine pill scripture, while the other studied the basic books that the Yuan Venerate had given him. His main body began to refine pills. He didn't even tell Yang Danlin and the Yuan Venerate about the shadow cultivation secret technique. In this world, no matter who it was, one couldn't trust someone completely. Even Yang Danlin and the Yuan Venerate were the same. After all, people would change. Once they found out that Ling Xiao possessed a mountain river martial soul, they would become completely different people. One shouldn't have the intention to harm others, but one should always be on guard against others. This was something that Hong Qi had told him before, and he had always kept it in mind. After grinding and processing the materials, Ling Xiao began to refine the life pills. It could be said that refining pills to make money was a common thing for other alchemists. However, This was just the beginning for him. He had to be careful. Even if it was just an unrated pill, he couldn't be the slightest bit careless. The refining process of the life pills also required precise calculations. This included the weight of each ingredient, the humidity of the life pills, the degree of flexibility, and so on. Everything had to be precise down to the millimeter. Even the slightest mistake could destroy a furnace of pills. After the life pills were refined, it was time to ignite them. Without the previous trouble, the lighting of the spiritual charcoal became a lot easier. Relying on the exquisite operation of the soul imprint state, the lighting of the furnace, which might have been a frequent failure for others, was a 100% success rate for him. The control of the fire after the ignition was the key. This was also the third step of refining pills, and was the most important. This wasn't the first time he had refined a high-grade true elemental pill, so he was familiar with the process and could easily handle it. Furthermore, the pills that came out of the furnace were absolutely perfect. However, the Marshall vein body shaping pill was a little more difficult. This was because he had only seen this pill in a book. He had never refined it before, nor had he seen Yang Danlin or Lon Yuera refine it. He hadn't even let his Marshall soul avatar simulate the refinement. This was purely his first time. He could let his Marshall soul avatar simulate the refinement a few times before starting to refine the Marshall vein body shaping pill himself. However, he didn't do that. This was because he believed in his control ability. This was just an unrated pill. If he still needed to simulate the refinement of such a pill repeatedly, it could only mean that his technique wasn't perfect. The spiritual charcoal had been ignited. The flame flickered, reflecting the cast of the brass pill furnace. This pill furnace was naturally very particular. Even an unrated pill had to be refined with a common-grade artifact. Only those common medicines and pills used by secular martial artists could be refined with an ordinary pill furnace. The pill furnace that Ling Xiao borrowed from Yang Danlin was a common-grade artifact pill furnace. Yang Danlin said that he had a better pill furnace, but he wouldn't give it to Ling Xiao for free, unless Ling Xiao's alchemy level improved further, as long as he could refine low-grade Huang-grade spirit pills. He would give him a fine-grade artifact pill furnace. A fine-grade artifact pill furnace could refine low-grade and mid-grade Huang-grade spirit pills. It was definitely a good thing. If Ling Xiao improved again, he would naturally get a better one. Ling Xiao knew that Yang Danlin was deliberately giving him pressure and motivation. If he didn't have this motivation, he was afraid that he wouldn't be so diligent. This time, Ling Xiao still mixed in some black fierce beast flames, not to evaporate the water, but to shorten the time needed to refine the pill. Chapter 296. The Marshall vein body sculpting pill's flame requirements were still quite different from that of the high-grade true elemental Dan. The former required a large fire to refine, but during the process, one had to suddenly choose to extinguish the fire. If it was described as a wavy line, the flame waves of this Marshall vein body sculpting pill were the kind of big ups and downs, showing a sharp shape without any arc. On the other hand, the high-grade true elemental Dan was basically a very smooth arc. Whether it was the rise or fall of the flame, it was relatively stable. It wasn't easy to master two completely different ways of controlling fire. But this was only for others. For Ling Xiao, this was really not a problem. In the state of entering the soul, the flame was like his arm, which could be completely controlled, whether it was the size or the temperature. It could be done to the best. If there was no problem in controlling the fire, the rest would be simple. The next thing he needed was to wait. After about a quarter of an hour, Ling Xiao opened the lid of the pill furnace. If it was someone else, it would take at least an hour. This was his advantage. However, after all, it was his first time refining the Marshall vein body sculpting pill. There was still a trace of nervousness in his heart, just by looking at the beads of sweat on his forehead. The moment the pill furnace was opened, 10 golden lights broke through the air, and 10 Marshall vein body sculpting pills that exuded golden light appeared in front of him. When each kind of medicinal pill was formed, strange lines would appear on it. And this kind of lines was the best way to judge the type of medicinal pill. This could not be faked, and even the most excellent alchemist did not understand the reason for the formation of lines, and could only regard it as some kind of opportunity between heaven and earth. The first time refining the Marshall vein body sculpting pill, the success rate was still 100%, but the perfection level was slightly worse than the high-grade true elemental Dan. 5 of them were 100% perfect, for 90% perfect, and one was only 80% perfect. If it was someone else at this level, they would have jumped up and cheered. However, Ling Xiao was not satisfied. He sat there and carefully recalled the things he had done during the alchemy process, hoping to find the problem. In this way, the next time he refined, these problems could be corrected. In the end, he discovered that the crux of the problem was his nervousness. When he opened the furnace, his hand trembled slightly, causing the opening of the furnace to be slightly delayed. It was just this small problem, but it caused a flaw to appear in the originally perfect medicinal pill. If an unrated pill couldn't be perfected in one go, then how could he dare to think about refining a high-grade pill? Ling Xiao was constantly reflecting on himself, hammering himself. His requirements for himself were terrifyingly strict. He knew very well that he was different from others. He had the mountain river martial spirit, so he should be more outstanding than others. If he was inferior to others in any aspect, then it would be a waste of the mountain river martial spirit's powerful existence. 30 high-grade true elemental dawn of 100% perfection. One could sell for 1,000 low-grade spirit stones. An ordinary high-grade true elemental Dan could only be sold for 100 low-grade spirit stones. This was the disparity. If one's skills were good, they would earn more. This was a principle that alchemists understood very well. The other 5 Marshall vein body, sculpting dawn of 100% perfection were also sold for 1,000 low-grade spirit stones. The remaining 5 could only be sold for 900 low-grade spirit stones and 800 low-grade spirit stones. If he calculated it like this time he had really earned a lot. A total of 300 low-grade spirit stones, plus the silver that could be exchanged for less than 100 low-grade spirit stones. This was all his cost. And these refined dawn were worth close to 40,000 low-grade spirit stones. This was too cool. He could go to the trading market and buy 4 low-grade yellow-grade transcendent body sculpting dawn. This was an alchemist. As long as one's skills were good, they would never be short of spirit stones. When the 2 types of dawn were finished refining, he recalled his 2 doppelgangers. The contents of the eternal divine pill scripture had been completely integrated into his soul, and he had even understood the relatively simple parts. However, this book was a bit too profound. Many of the contents were obscure and difficult to understand. It was impossible for him to understand it in a short period of time by himself. However, this kind of thing couldn't be rushed. He could slowly understand it, slowly comprehend it. Alchemy was a lifelong thing, and this kind of thing couldn't be done overnight. Furthermore, he had also memorized all the books about arrays that the Yuan Venerate had given him. These were the basics, so understanding them was relatively easy. There was no need for him to read them a second time, nor did he need to ask anyone else. While reading these books about arrays and formations, Ling Xiao comprehended some things. He realized that his comprehension of the bronze sword control technique seemed to have become more profound. This time, he didn't have time to cultivate, but he had actually comprehended the 9th level to the Great Circle realm. The reason was simple. The last 3 levels of the bronze sword control technique were basically related to array formations. He hadn't been able to comprehend them previously, purely because he didn't know anything about array formations and arrays. Now that he had read the books that the Yuan Venerate had given him, his mind was completely clear. After cultivating this set of sword control techniques to the Great Circle realm, one would automatically learn a set of sword formations called the Big Dipper sword formation. However, it required at least 36 flying swords. His clear wind sword was already useless, so he now had another goal, which was to obtain at least 36 treasure-grade flying swords. It was also possible to forge them himself. However, he didn't have that kind of standard at the moment. The blacksmiths in the Mountain River realm could only forge fine, treasure-grade weapons at most. They really couldn't do anything higher. Therefore, his idea was to forge 36 fine, treasure-grade flying swords first. When he obtained the remaining treasure-grade flying swords in the future, he would use smelting stones to smelt them. In any case, smelting stones could be bought at the market. The price was 1,000 low-grade spirit stones per smelting stone. Although it was a little expensive, it didn't seem like much to an alchemist like him. After this idea came to mind, he began to let his martial soul avatar help forge the flying swords. This process would probably take some time. Ling Xiao saw that it was still early, so he simply calmed down and took out the God Seal catalog to comprehend it. He had always felt that the God Seal catalog was very impressive. It was all-encompassing, including alchemy, weapon forging, array formations, refining arrays, martial arts, magical abilities, and so on. Although his current cultivation was too low and he could only comprehend some low-level profound meanings, he still gained a lot by comprehending it once a day. Some things might not be useful today, but they might not be in the future. In the God Seal catalog, there were many profound meanings related to movement techniques. Ancient martial artists were almost omnipotent when it came to flying. Ling Xiao couldn't comprehend those abilities, but through comprehending the profound meanings of these movement techniques, his cloud dragon divine travel finally entered the transformative realm after a period of stagnation. Regardless of whether it was his speed or the time he could float in the air, they were all much better than before. Chapter 297. In the Divine Seal Catalog, there were martialists who could use sword kinesis flight, and there were also martialists who could decapitate their enemies from thousands of miles away. Ling Xiao was naturally unable to do this. However, he could comprehend some low-level techniques and benefit from them. The bronze sword manipulation technique had once again entered the transformative boundary after reaching the great perfection boundary. After a martial technique entered the transformative boundary, one could comprehend a killing move. However, Ling Xiao felt that he still had to absorb and digest the current knowledge first. The progress he had made this time was the result of his accumulation of comprehension of the Divine Seal catalog. Of course, although he had yet to comprehend the killing move of the bronze sword manipulation technique, the power of its moves was clearly stronger than before. He had also gained some insights into the use of the Big Dipper sword array. That night, Ling Xiao was not in a hurry to cultivate. Instead, he had been consolidating the results of his current cultivation. He yearned for a rapid improvement in his cultivation base, but he did not neglect a solid foundation. Sometimes a little slower was also beneficial. He could discover many problems and fill in the gaps. The next morning, he left his cave abode and headed to the medicinal hall to look for Yuan Venerate. In any case, Yuan Venerate had basically been following Yang Danlin all this time. It was a situation where Yang Danlin was inseparable. Yuan Venerate would definitely be wherever Yang Danlin was. When he arrived at the medicinal hall, he discovered that Zhao Ji and Zhao Ci were also there. After asking around, he found out that they had come to the medicinal hall to collect elixir pills. A month had passed, and it was time for outer sect disciples to receive their salaries. The rest of the rewards could be collected directly at the outer sect service hall. However, elixir pills could only be collected at the medicinal hall. Junior brother Ling. Seeing Ling Xiao, Zhao Ji actually revealed a very happy smile. "Oh, it's senior brother Zhao. Have you come to the medicinal hall to collect elixir pills?" Ling Xiao and Zhao Ji did not have a good relationship, but it was not bad either. After all, they were in the same batch of people who had entered the sect, so they could still be considered friends. "Yes, but it is too difficult to enter your medicinal hall. It is said that outer sect disciples are not qualified to collect elixir pills. Only outer sect elders can collect them. Zhao Ji smiled bitterly. Zhao Ci stood to the side and didn't say anything. Zhao Ci didn't like Ling Xiao very much. The reason was that Ling Xiao's methods during the challenge were too cruel. He had almost crippled Lianel, and Yang Cheng had been beaten to a pulp. Even now, he still hadn't been rescued. It was said that his injuries had healed, but he had been unable to wake up from a nightmare. Ling Xiao wasn't interested in such a saint, so he didn't bother with her. Instead, he said to Zhao Ji, "There is indeed such a rule in the medicine hall. After all, there are too many outer sect disciples. If all of them come here to collect elixirs, it will be too busy." "I know that too." Zhao Ji smiled bitterly and said, "However, my sister and I are disciples of an inner sect elder, so this situation is a bit special. We still have to collect the pills for him. I heard that junior brother Ling is doing well in the medicine hall, and you have a very good relationship with senior sister Lan. Why don't you help us?" His words were indeed asking for help, but there was a hint of jealousy and envy in his tone. Of course, there was also a strong sense of unwillingness and unwillingness. Ling Xiao inwardly smiled. He didn't dislike people who were unwilling to admit defeat. As long as they didn't use despicable methods to deal with him, he wouldn't be ruthless. "All right, take out the proof your master gave me. I'll help you collect the pills." This was only a small favor. There was nothing wrong with having Zhao Ji owe him a favor. After all, Zhao Ji was the second prince of Northern Han. Moreover, looking at the situation, Zhao Ji's chances of inheriting the throne were very high. He didn't necessarily need Zhao Ji's help, but his friends and family in the secular world definitely needed it. Then I'll have to thank junior brother Ling. Zhao Ji was endlessly envious. He had waited here for an entire night, yet he still hadn't succeeded. Even if he took out his master's name, he wouldn't be able to scare the people of the medicine hall. Ling Xiao had casually agreed. This was ability, this was luck. Ling Xiao returned a moment after entering the medicine hall. "Humph. I knew that this kind of person only knew how to boast. Even if he couldn't do it, he would still take on everything." Seeing Ling Xiao's empty hands, Zhao Ci couldn't help but coldly snort. "Imperial sister, don't speak nonsense." Zhao Ji was also somewhat puzzled. However, he heard Ling Xiao say with a smile, "Princess Ci shouldn't have never heard of storage rings, right? You wanted too many pills, so I couldn't bring them out. This storage ring contains the things you wanted. Take a look, and if it's correct, then take it. Don't forget to return the storage ring to the medicine hall." "You actually brought them all back." Zhao Ji was astonished. He had originally thought that it would be good if Ling Xiao could receive a third of the pills. After all, even if his master personally came, it would only have this kind of effect. Therefore, he didn't give Ling Xiao a storage ring. Who knew that Ling Xiao would actually bring back all the pills? Haha, it's just a small matter. For Ling Xiao, this was indeed a small matter. Everyone in the medicine hall knew that he was Yang Danlin's favorite. Some even said that he had an ambiguous relationship with Yang Danlin. In addition, Ling Xiao had publicly defeated Qingmu in alchemy, so who would dare not give him face? It's a small matter for you, but it's a big deal for me. I'm now looking for a way to break through to the transcendent realm, so I need these pills. Zhao Ji cupped his fists and solemnly thanked him. He had already checked the storage ring, and it was indeed full of the pills they needed. Although Zhao Ci was extremely reluctant, she still thanked Ling Xiao along with her imperial brother. "Then I congratulate senior brother Zhao on breaking through to the transcendent realm and entering the inner sect." Ling Xiao smiled. "Junior brother Ling, I'm currently ranked 11th in the outer sect, second only to you. Of course, I don't dare say that I can beat junior brother Ling, but I really want to challenge you." Zhao Ji put away the storage ring and said to Ling Xiao solemnly. He felt that there was no need to hide anything in front of Ling Xiao. "Of course, no problem. I also want to test senior brother Zhao's strength. Thank you for thinking so highly of me, junior brother Ling. but I won't take advantage of others. Junior brotherling, you should take care of your own matters first. There are some things that I can't say, so you must be careful. Goodbye." Zhao Zi's inexplicable words confused Ling Xiao. He shook his head and didn't think much about it. Instead, he went straight into the medicine hall to look for Yuan Venerate. Yang Danlin and Yuan Venerate were in the hall master's room. "Greetings, master." "Greetings, old senior." Ling Xiao greeted them first. "All right, there's no need to be polite with us," Yuan Venerate said. "Time is of the essence, so master can't stay awake for too long. Have you memorized the books on arrays and array formations that I gave you yesterday?" "I've memorized them and have a preliminary understanding of them." Ling Xiao nodded. "That's good. In that case, let's move on to the next step." "Master, don't you intend to test me?" Ling Xiao asked doubtfully. "Through the process of learning alchemy, Master already knew that you have a photographic memory. What's the point of testing you? Is it a waste of time?" Yuan Venerate snapped. Chapter 298. Now, I will demonstrate the array refinement technique for you. You have to look carefully. This is just a small array. It's not complicated, but the principle is the same. Novel, la. As the Yuan Venerate spoke, he took out a piece of array refinement stone and a strange tool. This thing looked a little like an alchemy furnace, but its aura was obviously different. This is called an array refinement furnace. It's a little similar to an alchemy furnace, but the internal structure is completely different, the Yuan Venerate explained. This plate on the array refinement furnace is an array disk. When you set up an array, you set it up on top of it. Don't be fooled by its small size. In fact, it's a completely different world. Try to input your spirit power into it. Ling Xiao followed the Yuan Venerate's instructions. The moment his spirit power touched the array disk, a vast space appeared in front of him. See, the size of the space can be adjusted, and even the environment can be adjusted. It will change according to the size of your array and array. Of course, the grade of my alchemy furnace is higher, so the range of changes is also larger. An ordinary array refinement furnace can only accommodate a large city at most, and it can be as small as the tip of a needle, the Yuan Venerate said. You should know how to set up an ordinary array, an array on the array disk. You didn't study those books for nothing, right? Ling Xiao nodded. Good, next is the key. The array refinement process is very similar to the pill refinement process. You also need to control the flame. However, there will be some special incantations mixed in during the process. The incantations for every array are different, so you have to remember them all and understand them well. As the Yuan Venerate spoke, he threw a book to Ling Xiao and said, "This is the complete collection of array incantations. Take it back and memorize it." Then he personally demonstrated the refinement of arrays to Ling Xiao. Just like pill refinement, the first step was to choose the materials. The second step was more different. Pill refinement required the creation of life pills, while array refinement required the setting up of arrays or arrays. The third step was to ignite the fire. This was the same. The fourth step was also to control the flame. However, pill refinement did not require chanting incantations, while array refinement required the corresponding incantations. The fifth step was to open the furnace. There was no difference, except that one would produce pills, while the other would produce array refinement stones with arrays or arrays. He recounted this process to the Yuan Venerate. More or less, but you misunderstood the fourth step. In the process of alchemy, most of the time you don't need to chant the incantation. However, there are some pills with special effects that need to be combined with the incantation. After these pills are refined, there are special inscriptions on them. It's just that you haven't reached that level yet, so you don't have to remember it for the time being. It won't be too late to learn it when you can refine earth-grade spirit pills. Disciple understands. All right, that's roughly the refining process. I've already shown you how to do it, so I'll give you this fire snake refining formation stone. The Yuan Venerate gave the array refining stone that he had refined to Ling Shao. The fire serpent array is very simple. When used in battle, a maximum of 99 fire serpents will appear to assist the martial artist in battle. The strength and attack power of the fire serpent array are related to the materials used. This fire snake refining formation stone was refined from an unrated material. The attack power of each fire serpent is equivalent to that of an early stage, 9th level martial vein martialist. Furthermore, it can only trigger 10 fire serpents at most. The Yuan Venerate spoke very casually, but Ling Shao was dumbfounded when he heard this. This stone was actually equivalent to 10 early stage, 9th level martial vein martialists. If this thing was brought to the secular world, wouldn't it be a martial arts treasure that could cause a bloodbath? All right, you can go back now. If you can memorize the entire complete collection of array incantations and refine a fire snake refining formation stone with your own hands, Master will help you fulfill a wish, the Yuan Venerate said with a smile. Master, I want to use the Yuehua School's Moon Hall. I wonder if that's possible. Ling Shao had already done his research. The Moon Hall was a treasure trove in the Yuehua School. The cold qi there could help him cultivate defensive martial arts and was also very helpful in advancing his cultivation base. He still had a long way to go before he could advance to the transcendent realm. However, if he could break through to the 5th level of the Sky Dragon Golden Body, his physique would already be at the transcendent realm. By then, even if his cultivation base hadn't reached the transcendent realm, he wouldn't need to fear the attacks of transcendent realm experts below the 3rd level. At the very least, he wouldn't be killed instantly. He wouldn't be in such a sorry state like when he encountered He Sua in Sky Cloud City, where he could only rely on small tricks to trick his opponent. Ha ha ha. You're really smart, kid. You even know about the Moon Hall. Young Danlin laughed heartily. Old friend, he has given you a difficult problem. What kind of difficult problem is this? The person in charge of guarding the Moon Hall is Wang Han Tianzuan, right? Hasn't she always wanted you to help her refine a spirit pill? Just agree to her request and let her prepare the materials herself. You can help her refine the pill on the condition that Ling Shao enters the Moon Hall to cultivate. The Yuan Venerate scolded. Seems like it will work. Yang Danlin was stunned for a moment. The Yuan Venerate was right. Although Wang Han Tianzuan's female heavenly venerate was cold and emotionless, she also needed pills to improve her strength. Letting Ling Shao enter the Moon Hall to cultivate wasn't against the Yuehua School's rules. This was because the rules stated that as long as one was an inner court elder, one could recommend talented youths to enter the Moon Hall. Yang Danlin wasn't an elder, but his status was equivalent to an inner court elder, or even higher. Recommending Ling Shao wasn't a problem at all. However, recommending Ling Shao was one thing. Getting Wang Han Tianzuan, who was difficult to talk to agree was another. Some time ago, the flame deity even fought with Wang Han Tianzuan over this matter. However, demonic flame seemed to have suffered a loss. In the end, he had no choice but to pay a large amount of high-grade spirit stones to allow Ming Tian to enter the Moon Hall to cultivate for a period of time. Of course, what the flame deity couldn't do was very easy for Yang Danlin. All right, I'll agree to your request. If you can do what Yuan Venerate Master says, this old man will throw away his dignity and beg Wang Han Tianzuan. Yang Danlin chuckled. Thank you, Master. Thank you, Senior. Ling Shao had only casually mentioned it and didn't expect much. However, he hadn't expected that these two old men would actually agree. It seemed like his knowledge was still too shallow. What are you thanking me for? Since you have become my disciple, I have to give you some benefits. Don't worry about the medicinal hall anymore. Focus on refining the fire snake array refining stone. Yuan Venerate yawned. I'm going to sleep. Ling Shao bid farewell to Yuan Venerate and Yang Danlin and returned to his cave abode. He already understood the basic array formations and magic arrays. In other words, unrated magic arrays and magic arrays were no longer a problem for him. The next key was actually to refine the array. Of course, he had to memorize the entire, complete collection of array incantations before he could start refining the array. Ling Xiao thought that was the case. Chapter 299. In fact, Ling Xiao had only realized after memorizing the incantations in the complete collection of array incantations that these incantations were like lively musical notes. Just memorizing the words wasn't enough. Every incantation had a different intonation and speed when it was recited. Furthermore, it had to be combined with soul power for it to be effective. This was a little difficult. Therefore, he temporarily gave up on the understanding of the standard, grade, refining incantation. Instead, he focused all his energy on the unrated basic formations and magic formations. This way, it would be easier to understand the array formation mysteries of the Divine Seal Catalog. Even so, if it were an ordinary martial artist from a sect, it would take at least 10 years for them to completely memorize and understand these basics. A genius martialist might need less time, but it would still take 2 to 3 years. Even a top-notch genius would need a few months. However, Ling Xiao only needed a few days to complete all of this. This was his advantage. It was no wonder that Yang Danlin and the Yuan Venerate were willing to nurture him. If such a genius was given to someone else, he might become a terrifying opponent. Ling Xiao had originally intended to use 3 to 4 days to fully comprehend these things before attempting to refine an array formation. However, the deacon of the outer sect actually found him and said that someone wanted to challenge him. Who? Ling Xiao asked with a frown. He wondered if it could be Zhao Ji. That kid really didn't know how to choose the right time. It's Yang Cheng, who is ranked 10th in the outer sect. The deacon replied, Yang Cheng? Are you sure you're not mistaken? Ling Xiao was really shocked. Less than 2 hours ago, he had heard someone say that Yang Cheng was unconscious in the infirmary. How could someone actually challenge him now? It can't be wrong. It's Yang Cheng. It's not someone with the same name. It's Yang Cheng who you once defeated. Perhaps because of Yang Danlin, the deacon was very polite to Ling Xiao. He sighed and said, Ling Xiao, you better be careful. It said that the flame deity went to look for Yang Cheng 2 hours ago and then he came to challenge you. Oh, the flame deity actually went to look for Yang Cheng? This was really an accident. It was impossible to judge what a heaven-tier powerhouse could do. So Ling Xiao did not have any doubts now. When is the challenge? Ling Xiao asked. Tomorrow. I'm sorry, I don't have time tomorrow. How about 3 days? If he's willing after 3 days, I'll accept the challenge. Ling Xiao said after some thought. Ling Xiao, you have to give me a reason. Otherwise, I won't be able to explain myself to Elder Bai. Is there a reason? Does helping Wang Han Tianzuan refine pills count as a reason? Ling Xiao now simply pulled a banner and pulled a tiger skin. Anyway, Yang Danlin was definitely going to refine pills for Wang Han Tianzuan, so what he said was not a lie. Then there's no problem. Who would dare to delay Wang Han Tianzuan's matters? After the outer court deacon returned to the outer court, he confirmed the time. Yang Cheng did not seem to have any objection, so it was set 3 days later for Yang Cheng to challenge Ling Xiao. This Yang Cheng lost so miserably, but now he dares to challenge again. I guess he has something to rely on. I can't underestimate him. Although Ling Xiao didn't know what Yang Cheng was relying on, since Heavenly Venerate Demon Flame had intervened, he couldn't let his guard down. He was a very confident person, but he would never be arrogant. After the outer court deacon left, he continued to seize the time to comprehend the unrated array incantations in the complete collection of array incantations, hoping to make a breakthrough as soon as possible. Fortunately, these things could be verified with the God Investiture catalog, so the effect was very good. Perhaps even Yang Danlin did not notice this point. 1 day later, he stopped meditating again. It was not that he did not gain anything, but because Lan Yu came. When Lan Yu came, her face was gloomy. The expression on her face was as if she wanted to kill someone. Ling Xiao knew that something big had happened. If it was just a small matter, Lan Yu would not be like this. I heard that Yang Cheng challenged you again. Lan Yu asked. Yes, but as long as he has not advanced to the transcendent realm, I am not afraid. Ling Xiao said lightly. You are confident. Alas, unfortunately, your cultivation is too weak. If you were stronger, you would be able to help Yu Ling vent her anger. Lan Yu, I said angrily. Damn that Amoyan, he actually began to meddle in the outer court's affairs. He is really ambitious. What happened to senior sister Yu Ling? Ling Xiao was a little unhappy because Lan Yu's sudden visit interrupted his meditation. But when he heard this, he suddenly felt that Lan Yu had come at the right time. Thinking about what Zhao Ji had said to him before, and looking at Lan Yu's murderous expression, he was afraid that Dai Yu Ling was in trouble. Alas, this silly girl. Lan Yu smiled bitterly. She spent half a month to cultivate this herb, and it is about to mature. Once it matures, not only will she make great progress in cultivating herbs, but her cultivation will also directly advance to the peak of the 9th layer martial vein. This is a good thing, but good things can also turn into bad things. Lan Yu gritted her teeth and continued. Jin Ming, who was ranked 3rd in the outer sanctum, Tuo Bashan, who was ranked 5th, and Gongyang Nu, who was ranked 6th, all destroyed the herbs the day before they matured. Destroyed? Yes, these 3 brats said that it was caused by an accident when they were comparing notes. Yu Ling asked them to reason, but the 3 of them actually ganged up to bully Yu Ling and destroyed her martial spirit. Lan Yu's eyes were almost spitting fire when she said this. What? Ling Xiao suddenly stood up, and a fierce anger burned fiercely in his heart. When I heard this, I was anxious and wanted to destroy these 3 brats, but Mo Yen, that old bastard, stopped me. He said that it was an outer court disciples' matter, so let the outer court disciples deal with it. If I wanted to take action, he would also take action. Even my master didn't let me meddle in other people's business. But Yu Ling is my disciple. What a coward! Lan Yu felt angry and cowardly at the same time. Otherwise, she wouldn't have come to Ling Xiao. Let's go. Take me to see senior sister Yu Ling. Ling Xiao knew very well how miserable it was for a martial artist to lose their martial spirit, especially for someone like Dai Yu Ling. The reason why she was able to enter the Yuehua school was because of her special martial spirit. However, now that her martial spirit was destroyed, could she still continue to stay in the Yuehua school? Anger. Extraordinary anger. Ling Xiao felt that he had never been so angry except when his family was killed by the Li family. Even when the Ling family was besieged, he was very calm. But today he just wanted to kill. He knew very well that the reason why Dai Yu Ling was targeted by Jin Ming and the others was most likely because of him. This made him unable to stay calm. Well, since you want to die, I, Ling Xiao, will fulfill your wish. Yuehua School's Jin Ming, Tuo Bashan, and Gongyang Nu could be removed from the list. So what if they offended the flame deity? Chapter 300. In a disciple's residence in the medicine hall, bedding was thrown on the ground, along with many books and herbs. Dai Yu Ling was lying on the ground, panting weakly. Her martial spirit was destroyed, so she was not qualified to stay here anymore. She had thought about it before, but she did not expect that these people would come so fast. They directly pulled her up from the bed and threw her out with the bedding. It had just rained, so there were still puddles on the ground. Dai Yu Ling felt wronged as tears mixed with the mud. Why are you crying, you trash? Who told you to offend Senior Brother Hesu and the flame deity? You deserve it. Although the girl lying on the ground was very weak, the outer sect disciple who came to expel Dai Yu Ling still kicked her fiercely. The girl spat out a mouthful of blood, and her body became weaker. Hey, don't be like this. She is also very pitiful. Someone next to him persuaded. Whoever dares to persuade her will end up like her. The person who kicked Dai Yu Ling said coldly. She is Senior Sister Lan's disciple. If you do this, Senior Sister Lan will kill you. Someone said, so what if she is Lan Yuer? We are the flame deity's people. Inner sect disciples are not allowed to directly interfere with outer sect matters. What can Lan Yuer do to us? What can she do to us? The arrogant guy snorted coldly and then laughed out loud. However, his laughter stopped abruptly, because his head was separated from his neck and he could no longer speak. The one who attacked was Lan Yuer. She was still one step faster than Ling Xiao, so she made the first move. You killed him? The rest of the outer sect disciples who expelled Lan Yuer trembled and shouted, Yes, I killed him, and I will kill you all. Inner sect disciples are not allowed to directly interfere with outer sect matters. But don't forget, Dai Yuling is my disciple. If you have the ability, go and tell him Mo Yan and see if he will protect you. When Lan Yuer attacked, He Suwa was nearby, but the flame deity was not there. The reason Empyrean Demon Flame protected Goldcrest, Tobashan, and Gongyangnu was because their talents were not bad. However, if these people died today, then so be it. Heavenly Venerable Devil Flame definitely wouldn't personally stop them. He Suwa didn't dare either, because he was not Lan Yuer's opponent. Ah, no. After a few screams, 5 corpses were left on the ground. Lan Yuer didn't even look at him and went to check on Dai Yuling's injuries. She's badly hurt. Ling Xiao helped Dai Yuling up and said, not only was her martial spirit destroyed, but she was also beaten up. Ling Xiao's heart was bleeding as he said this. Dai Yuling revealed a haggard smile. She lay in Ling Xiao's arms and looked at her master. That bright smile might be saying that there were still people in this world who cared about her and that she had not been abandoned. Ling Xiao looked at the bedding and books on the ground. He waved his hand and directly pulled them into the mountain river world. Then he carried Dai Yuling to the infirmary. Lan Yuer followed behind, anxiously looking at the dying Dai Yuling. She hated that she didn't care more about this disciple of hers. She hated that she wasn't a celestial realm expert. Otherwise, she wouldn't have to beg her master to help her. She could solve the problem by herself. In the infirmary, Dai Yuling was undergoing emergency treatment. With Lan Yuer and Ling Xiao here, no one dared to not do their best. The patient's condition has stabilized, but try not to talk too much. Medicine Master reminded Lan Yuer and Ling Xiao and then left. The two of them walked into the ward. Looking at Dai Yuling lying on the bed, they felt very uncomfortable. Why didn't you tell me this earlier? Ling Xiao said with a wry smile. Dai Yuling's smile was very bright. Although her face was haggard, she still felt very happy when facing Ling Xiao and Lan Yuer. Don't blame her. Lan Yuer sighed and said, She is also a very stubborn person. She can't come to you whenever she is in trouble. What's more, you have made enough enemies in Yuehua School. She is just thinking about you. I know, but this thing happened because of me. If it weren't for me, Senior Sister Yuling wouldn't have been bullied. Ling Xiao gritted his teeth and said, Senior Sister Lan, is there a place in Yuehua School where I can carry out the death challenge? What do you want to do? With your strength, you can't win against any of the 3 of them, Lan Yuer said hurriedly. Ling Xiao didn't speak, but slowly released his real aura. At that moment, Lan Yuer's face was full of shock and disbelief. When Ling Xiao restrained his aura again, he asked, Do I have the qualification now? Yes. Lan Yuer nodded and said, There is indeed such a place in Yuehua School. It is called the Desperation Building. The Desperation Building? Yes. In fact, sometimes there are some discordant conflicts within the sect. At this time, we can only rely on force to solve the problem. However, an ordinary fight is definitely not possible because it can't display our true strength. Lan Yuer explained, the Desperation Building is a battle of life and death. The sect doesn't care who lives and who dies. The winner won't receive any rewards. But there will also be no punishment. What are the rules of the challenge? Ling Xiao asked again. There is only one rule. The other party has to accept your death challenge. Lan Yu replied. That's good. Ling Xiao took a deep breath and said, Senior Sister Yuling, I will avenge you. This was originally caused by me, so only I can solve it. As for your martial soul, because I knew it too late, it is impossible to repair it. However, I can give you my Sakura tree martial soul. Among this senior sister, the only one who could give someone a martial spirit was probably Ling Xiao. He had never liked the Sakura tree martial soul. He thought it was too feminine. Since Dai Yuling's martial soul was destroyed, he could give it to her. Ling Xiao's Sakura tree martial soul was also a plant martial soul. Because it had a trace of the mountain river martial soul's energy, it should be more powerful than Dai Yuling's original martial soul. As for Ling Xiao's lost martial soul, he naturally wanted to take it from Jin Ming, Tuoba Shan, and Gong Yangnu. Even if it was useless, he could take it and use it as nourishment to feed his martial soul. No, I can't take it, Dai Yuling said hurriedly. Ling Xiao didn't care about her refusal. He directly pressed Dai Yuling's head and forcibly implanted the Sakura tree martial soul. In other people's eyes it was impossible, but he did it very easily. Don't refuse. I don't lack this martial soul, but you are different. If you treat me as a friend, then keep it. Seeing that Dai Yuling still wanted to refuse, Ling Xiao said very seriously, I really don't know what to do with you. Dai Yuling smiled bitterly. She probably knew Ling Xiao better than anyone in the Yuehua school. After all, they were together in the latent dragon camp. Chapter 301. Senior Sister Lan, I'll leave Senior Sister Yuling in your care. As her master, you can't let her get hurt again. Otherwise, I'll make her worship Senior Yang as her master. Ling Xiao made a half-joking remark. Don't worry. From today onwards, unless I, Lan Yu die, I won't let my disciple get hurt again. Lan Yu said firmly. And then I'll go. Where are you going? The Tower of Desperation. Ling Xiao's figure had already disappeared into the distance. Only the words Tower of Desperation were still echoing in the medical room. The Tower of Desperation was filled with murderous intent. Countless cultivators had died here. Just getting close to it would make one shiver. If one didn't have a strong will, they wouldn't be able to stay near the Tower of Desperation. Stop. The Tower of Desperation is a place of death. You can't enter without permission. At the Tower of Desperation, Ling Xiao was stopped by a first-layer transcendent realm cultivator. He seemed to be an inner disciple in charge of guarding the Tower of Desperation. I want to issue a death challenge. Ling Xiao's voice was as cold as the temperature of the 9 hells. Another one who's not afraid of death. You're only at the peak of the 8th layer martial vein. I advise you not to be impulsive. Once you enter the Tower of Desperation, your life is no longer in your hands. The sect won't care either. The guard advised. I've already thought about it. Ling Xiao's intention was very firm. Since you're not afraid of death, write down the name of the person you want to challenge. We'll issue a notice to the entire Yuehua school. If they accept, the challenge will be carried out 1 day later. Do you have any objections? No. Then write down the name. The guard brought Ling Xiao to the declaration office of the Tower of Desperation. Obviously, no one had been here for a long time. It looked a little shabby, and there were even obvious spider webs in some places. After all, it was a death challenge. If it wasn't necessary to kill the opponent, very few people would come here to issue a challenge. Once a death challenge was issued, there was no room for regret. As long as the opponent accepted the challenge, there was no choice but to accept the challenge. Of course, you can choose to run away. No one will stop you. But I'm afraid you won't have the face to see the people from Yuehua School again. Ling Xiao took a deep breath and wrote down the names of the 3 people. Ranked 6th in the outer sect, Gong Yangnu. Ranked 5th in the outer sect, Tuoba Shan. Ranked 3rd in the outer sect, Jin Ming. His handwriting was as sharp as a blade, as if he wanted to kill the three of them directly. Huh. The Transcendent Realm Guard was stunned for a moment before angrily shouting, "Did you come here to cause trouble?" As far as I know, the top 30 in the outer sect are all half-step masters, and you, a martial master at the peak of the 8th level of the martial vein, are challenging 3 people at once? At this moment, many disciples from nearby sects had also noticed the situation and were watching the show from afar. Among these people were Zhao Ji and Zhao Ci. A martial artist's eyesight was extremely terrifying. Even if they were thousands of meters away, they could still clearly see tiny words. Not to mention that Ling Zhao's words were written so big. "This guy is crazy," Zhao Ci muttered. Zhao Ji looked surprised, but he did not express his opinion. Through this period of time, he felt that Ling Xiao was not the kind of person who would act rashly. What's more, Ling Xiao's face was so calm, and there was no sign of impulsiveness at all. This showed that he had thought it through before coming here, and not because of a moment of impulse. Last time, Ling Xiao challenged Li Anil and Yang Cheng, 2 people at once, which had already alarmed the entire outer sect, and even many people in the inner sect were surprised. But after all, it was just a spar and he would not die anyway. However, this time it was a death challenge, and he challenged 3 people at once. The strength of these 3 people was more than 10 times stronger than the previous challengers, but Ling Zhao's strength did not seem to have improved at all. Once this kind of news spread, the entire sect would be shaken, and many inner sect disciples would probably come to watch the battle. I'm not joking, and I don't mean to play tricks on senior brother. May I ask if my challenge violated the rules? Ling Xiao asked lightly. No. Since you didn't, why not? Ling Xiao asked back. Do you really want a challenge? Are you sure? I'm warning you, once the challenge notice is issued, no one has the right to take it back, not even the sect leader. The guard asked Ling Xiao again, very seriously. Yes. Ling Xiao's voice became calmer. In fact, he was indeed a little impulsive when he initially planned a challenge because his whole body was filled with anger. But on the way here, he had already thought it through carefully. Jin Ming, Tuobashan, and Gongyang Nu must be killed. This was to establish his authority. It was also to kill the chicken to warn the monkey. Even if he entered the inner sect in the future, there would be people who would think carefully before offending him. After all, he was someone who dared to issue a death challenge easily. As for whether those 3 people would agree or not, the answer was too certain. They would definitely agree. Those 3 people were undoubtedly the lackeys of He Suo and the Flame Deity. They usually couldn't deal with Ling Xiao, so they targeted Dai Yuling. In the end, they wanted to force Ling Xiao to do something irrational. Now that he had given those 3 lackeys what they wanted, would they refuse? Of course not. They would definitely agree immediately, and in their hearts they would be thinking about how to tear Ling Xiao to pieces. Well, since you have made up your mind, I will fulfill your wish. When you die, don't let your vengeful soul come looking for me. The Transcendent Realm Guard sighed, and then issued a death challenge notice. This notice was sent to the entire sect. Jin Ming, Tuobashan, and Gongyang Nu received the news immediately and gave a reply. Challenge accepted. Well, when are you going to issue the death challenge? The guard asked. Although he was just a guard, he was still a transcendent realm cultivator. It was just an outer sect disciple's death challenge, so he could make the decision. There was no need to inform the person in charge of the death tower, which was the tower master, an inner sect elder. 1 day later, Ling Xiao replied, Good. You can go back and prepare. Eat something good. Ha! Impulsiveness is the devil. The Transcendent Realm Guard sighed. He couldn't trust this outer sect disciple in front of him. After all, this guy's cultivation was too low, and there was no way he could trust him. Wait a minute, I also want to issue a death challenge. Suddenly a voice interrupted. Yang Cheng. Ling Xiao frowned. At this time, Yang Cheng gave off a very strange feeling. He was wearing a black robe that completely wrapped his body, only revealing a pair of eyes. If it was just his appearance, it wouldn't be a big deal, but the key was that there was a very dangerous aura in his black robe. The flame deity's methods were really powerful. What kind of method did he use to make Yang Cheng recover so quickly and increase his strength so much? Chapter 302. You also want to issue a death challenge? Who do you want to challenge? The Transcendent Realm Guard sighed. What's wrong with everyone today? Did they all eat gunpowder? Are they all on steroids? Why do they want to issue a death challenge at the slightest provocation? I want to challenge him. Yang Cheng pointed to Ling Xiao and said, Originally, I applied for an outer sect challenge, but it's too troublesome to change places on the same day, so I'll just settle it in the Desperation Tower. Hey, aren't you taking advantage of this situation? He wants to challenge 3 outer sect masters, and you still want to join in the fun. Let's wait for a while. Senior brother, do you think I'll be able to wait? Yang Cheng asked. You're right. After this death challenge, this little guy will die, so you won't have a chance to challenge him again. The Transcendent Realm Guard sighed and looked at Ling Xiao. Do you accept? In fact, you can refuse. No one will laugh at you, and no one will force you. I accept. Ling Xiao planned to settle all these matters once and for all, so as to avoid future trouble. The guard looked at Ling Xiao with slight sympathy. Young people these days were really impulsive. Thinking back to his own hot-blooded past, the guard couldn't help but sigh. If it was an ordinary challenge, it would be enough to dampen your spirit, but you're just pushing yourself onto the road to death. On the same day, 4 death challenges were held. One of them used to be the 10th ranked outer sect disciple, but was now several times stronger than before. The other 3 were also the 6th, 5th, and 3rd ranked outer sect disciples. He really couldn't imagine how Ling Xiao would win, especially Jinming, who was ranked 3rd. In terms of physical fitness, he was definitely the best in the outer sect, and even if he encountered a first-layer Transcendent Realm cultivator, he wouldn't die. This guy had occupied 3rd place for 3 or 4 years, and his strength was terrifying. Even the 1st and 2nd ranked monsters weren't willing to provoke him easily. Many thanks for senior brother's concern. I'll be careful. Ling Xiao cupped his fists and said. He knew that the person in front of him was really thinking about him, but unfortunately, the other party didn't understand his own abilities. Sai, go back and have a good rest. Eat something good. In the eyes of this Transcendent Realm Guard, what Ling Xiao was about to do next was no different from walking to the guillotine. Ling Xiao didn't explain anything. He just smiled and turned to leave. Zhao wanted to stop him, but in the end he didn't. He knew Ling Zhao's character too well. Even if he tried to persuade him, it would be meaningless. However, he didn't stop her. Instead, Zhao Xi rushed out. Ling Xiao, you're a lunatic. Is suicide fun? Zhao Ji slapped his forehead. He suddenly remembered that his sister was a typical example of overflowing love. She didn't target anyone, as long as it was a person. She would sympathize and pity them. He was putting his pity on Ling Xiao. Princess Ci, I haven't lived long enough. Ling Xiao glanced at Zhao Ci, and his figure flashed. How could Zhao Ci block him? This lunatic. Zhao Ci stomped her feet in anger. Zhao Ji smiled bitterly and shook his head. Even he felt that Ling Xiao was committing suicide, let alone Zhao Ci. Not long after Ling Xiao left, the guards of the Desperation Tower announced that Yang Cheng had issued a death challenge to him. 4 death challenges in a day immediately caused quite a stir in the entire sect. The outer sect, in particular, was simply boiling over. However, without exception, everyone felt that Ling Xiao was courting death. Even Lan Yuer hadn't expected that this kid would issue 4 death challenges in a day. In the end, Yang Danlin, Yuan Venerate, and Lan Yuer went to Ling Xiao's cave abode and were furious. They said that Ling Xiao was crazy and didn't want to live anymore. Ling Xiao didn't explain anything. He just smiled. In any case, The death challenge had already been announced. It was impossible to go back on his word unless Ling Xiao left the Yuehua school and became a fugitive. Of course, they didn't tell Dai Yuling about this. Otherwise, Dai Yuling wouldn't be able to recuperate in peace. At the same time, Yang Cheng was lying on a strange bed in the puppet hall. He was undergoing some modifications. Ling Xiao, oh Ling Xiao, you have caused me to be in this state. I will definitely make you die a horrible death. A supreme-grade spirit stone was spinning rapidly in the depths of his body. His entire body was emitting a special, milky white glow. Today he had undergone a modification in the puppet hall. His entire body had retained his brain, while the rest had been replaced by puppet machinery. All his true essence now came from the central core. This was the true essence that the flame deity had given him. It was much stronger than the true essence cultivated by a gold-grade entry-level internal cultivation technique. It was almost equivalent to the true essence condensed by a rare gold-grade internal cultivation technique. In the outer sect, no one was qualified to learn rare gold-grade martial arts. He believed that the strength of his true essence would definitely surpass Ling Xiao's. Not only that, but after the precise modification, the power of any move he displayed now was several times stronger than before. He could have challenged the 9th, or even the 8th or 7th outer sect disciple. However, he chose Ling Xiao. This was to take revenge. At the same time, in He Sua's cave residence, Jin Ming, Tuo Bashan, and Gong Yang Nu were all there. In addition, He Sua and Elder He were also there. It seemed that He Sua had agreed to Elder He's conditions. The reward had become 10 times more than before. Otherwise, Elder He wouldn't have stayed there. Elder He, I'll have to trouble you with Lan Yuer. Just stop her from interfering. My master is a heavenly master after all. It's not good for him to interfere. He Sua looked at Elder He and proposed a toast. Leave it to me. Elder He drank the wine in one gulp. Since he had accepted He Sua's things, he couldn't help but help him. Otherwise, with Empyrean Demon Flame's temper, he definitely wouldn't let him off. Thank you, Elder He. He Sua cupped his hands and looked at Jin Ming and the others. Are you confident? Jin Ming said lightly, Senior Brother He Sua, you can rest assured. Ling Xiao may not be able to pass Yang Cheng's test. Maybe it won't even be our turn to fight. Don't be careless. He Sua had suffered a loss from Ling Xiao. He hated this kid to the bone, but he also valued him very much. Since Ling Xiao dares to challenge the 3 of you to death, how can he be weak? Don't hold back during the battle. Kill that kid with all your strength. Senior Brother He Sua, you think too highly of that kid. Don't forget he has to fight 4 battles in a row. Gong Yang laughed angrily. Even if Yang Cheng, that trash, can't kill Ling Xiao, he should be able to consume a lot of that kid's true essence. He may even be seriously injured. I'll take care of the rest. He Sua thought about it and agreed. Perhaps he was worrying too much. Even if Ling Xiao was really hiding his strength, unless he broke through to the transcendent realm, facing these 4 people, there was no way he could survive. Chapter 303. He Sua felt that Jin Ming should be the one to deal with Ling Xiao in the end. After thinking about it, he also felt that there shouldn't be any unforeseen circumstances. Could it be that the kid liked Dai Yuling and had rashly issued a death challenge because of her? It was normal for young people to make such mistakes. He Sua couldn't help but sneer. Impulsiveness was the devil. It was too late for regrets now. He had already asked people to guard the passage down the mountain. If Ling Xiao intended to escape while it was dark, he would definitely know immediately. He couldn't do anything in the sect, but he could do it personally outside. That way, he would have a greater chance of success. A little more than a day might be too short for others. However, Ling Xiao could do a lot of things. During this period, his cultivation base continued to improve, and he had already reached the level of a half-step master. This kind of advancement didn't need to be deliberate. His body still had the extraordinary body-shaping elixir that hadn't been completely digested. Even if he slept every day, his cultivation base would still improve at a very impressive speed. He didn't even stop the task given to him by the Yuan Venerate. There was no need to stop. Given his current strength, killing those 4 people shouldn't be a big problem. Perhaps Jean Ming was the only one who could bring him some trouble. The other 3 were simply not enough to deal with. Furthermore, he also took this opportunity to get his martial soul clone to help him forge 36 Big Dipper flying swords. Although their names were flashy, they were only high-quality flying swords. In order to gather materials, he sold 10 high-grade True Essence pills before finally forging the 36 Big Dipper flying swords. Since then, the Clear Wind sword had been honorably retired. After successfully forging the 36 Big Dipper flying swords, his Imperial Sword Art Bronze Scroll had become the martial skill with the most terrifying lethality. Not only was it sudden, but it was also terrifying. Naturally, this was to be used as a trump card. In addition, his Sky Dragon True Essence had become increasingly pure. The True Essence condensed from the Snow Lotus True Essence could be directly transformed into Sky Dragon True Essence. This meant that he didn't need to rush to cultivate a gold-grade internal cultivation technique. This was because his current Sky Dragon True Essence was already equivalent to a gold-grade True Essence. In other words, the Sky Dragon True Essence was usually 2 levels stronger than the original True Essence he cultivated. This level of True Essence was more than enough to deal with Outer Court disciples. What's more, he still had the true chi of a transcendent realm master and the true chi of a vicious beast and thunderbolt true chi in his body. According to the grade of the Inner Force cultivation method, it should be equivalent to the true essence produced by the gold grade Inner Force cultivation method. He had more than 1 or 2 tricks up his sleeve. In terms of martial souls, he had an absolute advantage. If he wasn't afraid of being too ostentatious, he could have used 3 martial souls at the same time. Currently, his martial soul had also improved, but the improvement was not very obvious. It seemed that after the martial soul had become a complete martial soul, its speed of improvement had obviously slowed down. To solve this problem, every martial artist had a different method. However, Ling Xiao felt that the most suitable thing for him was to plunder his opponent's martial spirit and then devour it. That way, his speed of improvement would be the fastest. It was daybreak. It was already the day of the death challenge. Ling Xiao recalled the 2 clones and walked out of the cave. Outside the door, Yang Danlin, Lan Yu, and even Dai Yuling were waiting with their sick bodies. Zhao, Ji, and Zhao Xi also came over, but the 2 of them had different attitudes. Zhao Ji felt that Ling Xiao was a person that could be befriended. Zhao Xi was purely compassionate. In addition to them, there were many outer sect experts gathered nearby. These people were all disciples in the top 30. Their jobs were relatively easy, so it was not a problem for them to go to the Desperation Tower to watch the show. Oh, he's out. I thought that kid was so scared that he ran out of the sect. So what if he came out? He's still going to die. Let's go to the Desperation Tower. There are a few battles today that we can watch. These people moved their feet and turned into afterimages as they headed towards the Desperation Tower. There were already many people gathered around the Desperation Tower. Of course, most of them were outer sect disciples, but there were also a few inner sect disciples who came to join in the fun. These inner sect disciples' cultivation was relatively low, below the transcendent 3rd layer, so they paid more attention to the outer sect, quasi-inner sect disciples, because these quasi-inner sect disciples were likely to become their competitors. Why isn't he here yet? That Ling Xiao couldn't have run away, right? I think he must have run away. A person going through 4 death challenges on the same day, and his opponents are all half-step masters. Even a transcendent, 1st layer martial artist wouldn't dare to do so. Yes, that kid probably made such a decision in a moment of impulse, but he regretted it in the end. Ling Xiao is here. While these people were discussing, Ling Xiao had already arrived. Following him were Yang Danlin, Lan Yu, Dayuling, Zhao Ji, Zhao Xiai, and a few other outer sect disciples that had a good relationship with. Why is Old Hall Master Yang here? And Senior Sister Lan? You guys don't know, right? This Ling Xiao might have been groomed by Old Hall Master Yang as his successor. There are also rumors that Senior Sister Lan has taken a liking to this kid. Don't talk nonsense. Senior Sister Lan has always been aloof. She doesn't even put the number one inner sect disciple in her eyes. How could she fall in love with this kid? Although they said so, the attitude between Ling Xiao and Lan Yu was indeed ambiguous. It seemed that their relationship was too intimate. Ling Xiao roughly looked at the onlookers around the Desperation Tower. There were already more than 1,000 people, including 90% of the outer sect disciples. Don't these people have to work? They really have the time. What he didn't know was that because this death challenge was too shocking, the outer sect disciples simply gave all the outer sect disciples a holiday. Unless they were in seclusion and couldn't come, they all came to watch the fun. That was why there were so many people. Ling Xiao, it's good that you're here. I was afraid that you wouldn't come. Otherwise, who would take revenge on me? Yang Qing came before dawn because he was too excited. He wanted to kill Ling Xiao with his own hands. Ling Xiao just glanced at him faintly, then turned his gaze to Jin Ming, Tuo Bashan, and Gong Yang Nu. In terms of aura, Jin Ming was obviously stronger than the other outer sect disciples. That kind of aura was just like that of a transcendent master. Did you hear? Jin Ming defeated another transcendent first layer cultivator half a month ago. This guy's defensive secret art is too terrifying. Of course I heard. An inner sect elder wants to make an exception and bring him into the inner sect, but he doesn't seem to be in a hurry. I don't know what he wants to do. What do you know? The top 3 outer sect disciples get more resources than the bottom inner sect disciples. This is the advantage. It's better to be the head of a chicken than the tail of a phoenix. Jin Ming's strength was stronger than half a month ago. Ling Xiao felt his blood boiling. Only this kind of evenly matched battle could make him so excited. Chapter 304. Gong Yang Nu was an expert in saber techniques. Although he was only 17 years old, he looked like he was in his 30s. It was said that Tuo Bashan's divine bow was invincible, and he had a bow martial spirit. His palm technique was also very powerful. However, this was just a rumor. The Tower Master of the Desperation Tower has arrived. Perhaps it was because today's death challenge had attracted too much attention that the Tower Master of the Desperation Tower had come in person. Ling Xiao looked at this person in surprise. This person was wearing a black ghost mask, but his aura was very familiar. No way. Ling Xiao felt that his guess might be wrong, so he shook his head and let go of the confusion in his heart. Today's battle will be presided over by this senior. Outsiders are not allowed to interfere, or they will be killed without mercy. The Tower Master of the Desperation Tower was also a Heaven Realm powerhouse. His murderous aura was very terrifying. Fortunately, he deliberately restrained his murderous aura. Otherwise, a large number of the onlookers would have died. No one dared to say a word. Even Elder Bai and Elder He, who came to watch the battle, did not dare to say a word. In the eyes of a Heaven Realm powerhouse, a 9th-level Transcendent Realm powerhouse was not worth mentioning. The first battle, Yang Cheng, who is ranked 10th in the Outer Sect, challenges Ling Xiao, who is currently ranked 10th in the Outer Sect. Please enter the Desperation Tower. The Desperation Tower was called a tower, but it was actually a dilapidated ruin. All the battles would be carried out in this ruin. From the outside, the battle could be clearly seen. As soon as the Tower Master of the Desperation Tower finished speaking, Yang Cheng rushed out impatiently. Judging from his movement technique, his strength was indeed much stronger than before. There was no doubt about that. Ling Xiao also jumped into the air and rushed into the Desperation Tower. His movement technique was stronger than Yang Cheng's, but he did not deliberately use it. So it looked like he was slower than Yangcheng. It's starting. Many outer sect disciples took a deep breath. Ling Xiao was a new outer sect disciple, while the other four were old outer sect disciples. Therefore, from this point of view, it was actually a battle between the old and the new. Therefore, the outer sect disciples were very excited. Ling Xiao, even though you overestimated your ability and issued death challenges to senior brother Jinming, senior brother Tabashan, and senior brother Gongyang, unfortunately, you won't have the chance to fight them because you'll die at my hands. Facing Ling Xiao, Yang Cheng was clearly very excited and also very angry. The scene of the battle kept replaying in his mind. When he thought of that defeat, he felt humiliated and angry. He wanted nothing more than to tear Ling Xiao into pieces. On his body, the milky white true essence turned into a tornado, completely wrapping him up. Although his appearance couldn't be seen clearly, the wind and cloud true essence produced by his wind and cloud secret art was much stronger than before. The terrifying tornado blew up the bricks and stones on the ruins, forming a huge garbage dump. It just floated above Yang Cheng's head. Boom! The garbage, which seemed to weigh at least 10,000 pounds, was blown towards Ling Xiao by the strong wind. Ling Xiao didn't move and just stood there quietly. However, the moment the pile of garbage got close to him, it actually split apart, and this time it exploded and scattered. Yang Cheng didn't seem to expect to defeat Ling Xiao with this move. It was just a greeting. The next moment, his fighting spirit rose to the extreme. A terrifying aura crazily rolled up. The original tornado expanded again, crazily wreaking havoc on the dilapidated ruins. He was already a half-step master. Now, with the true essence bestowed by the flame deity, his aura was so terrifying that it made many outer sect disciples tremble. This guy is much stronger than before. Those who were familiar with Yang Cheng exclaimed, "Yeah, he's at least 7 or 8 times stronger. He couldn't have such a terrifying aura in the past. Hee, I've said that Ling Xiao will die in the first round. There's no need for him to fight the next few rounds." Seeing this scene, Dai Yuling grabbed her master Lan Yu, Oi's hand tightly. "Master, please save Ling Xiao. He shouldn't die for me." Lan Yu sighed. Could she help? Not to mention that Elder He was watching from the side. The Desperation Tower's master wouldn't allow her to intervene. This was a life-and-death battle. But if Ling Xiao's life was really in danger, could she not help? She didn't think she could do it. Could she just watch Ling Xiao die? Then she might as well break the sect's rules. At worst, she would be expelled from the sect. However, seeing Ling Xiao's expression, her original worry disappeared in an instant. His face was still indifferent and emotionless, but Lan Yu could feel the strong self-confidence that came from his bones. "Yuling, don't worry. Ling Xiao is far stronger than you think," Lan Yu said. There was no basis for her words, but she believed that her judgment was not wrong. In the Desperation Tower, Ling Xiao looked at Yang Cheng indifferently. He didn't mean to take the initiative to attack. In the face of an unfamiliar enemy, it was often more appropriate to attack after the enemy had attacked. Of course, if the opponent didn't make a move for a long time, then he would have to think of a way. He didn't intend to fight a protracted battle with Yang Cheng. At most 3 moves. Ling Xiao thought for a while and set such a goal. Of course, it would be best to solve it in 1 move. Among the 4 opponents, the one who could really pose a threat to him was Jinming. As for the other 3, he really couldn't raise his interest. "Ling Xiao, this day next year will be the anniversary of your death. You should regret seriously injuring me back then." Suddenly, Yang Cheng's body moved amidst the violent roar. His entire body merged into the huge tornado, and his hands actually turned into sharp ice blades, which flickered with cold light in the fierce wind. Boom! At that moment, the entire Desperation Tower was caught in the raging wind, and many people couldn't even see what was happening. What a terrifying explosive force! What a terrifying power! Is this still Yang Cheng? This kind of attack, I'm afraid it won't lose to the top 5. In just an instant, Yang Cheng's attack arrived. Looking from afar, it was more like a tornado sweeping a huge treasure sword, piercing towards Ling Xiao. The speed was too fast, and Ling Xiao couldn't dodge. Of course, this was just the feeling of a bystander. But Ling Xiao's face revealed a hint of a smile, because he saw it clearly. Yang Cheng's so-called trump card had been completely exposed in front of him. 3 moves? Ling Xiao smiled disdainfully. He really overestimated this Yang Cheng. This guy's power and explosive force were indeed more terrifying than before, but in Ling Xiao's view, this guy had actually become weaker. Because most of his body was replaced by a puppet, his agility and reaction were much worse. After all, no matter how good a puppet was, it couldn't compare to a human body. Moreover, Yang Cheng, this idiot, relied on his powerful strength, thinking that he could instantly defeat Ling Xiao, so he didn't realize at all that his powerful move exposed a big flaw. Boom! A deafening roar resounded. Chapter 305. Even though he was a Sky Realm expert, he did not have the ability to see through things. Therefore, no one, including the Desperation Tower Master, knew what had happened to Ling Xiao. Many people even thought that Ling Xiao had been killed. Ling Xiao! Dai Yuling screamed and fainted in Lan Yu's arms. Lan Yu looked miserable. She handed Dai Yuling over to Yang Danlin and walked slowly to the Desperation Tower. She had to save Ling Xiao even if she had to offend the Desperation Tower Master. She had believed in Ling Xiao at first, but Ling Xiao's aura had disappeared completely the moment she heard the explosion. This caused her to be completely flustered. She lost her usual calmness and became furious. Little Lan, are you crazy? Ling Xiao is fine. Yang Danlin stopped Lan Yu. In fact, he did not know what had happened there either. Yuan Venerates had told him that. The smoke and dust gradually dispersed. Ling Xiao's figure was nowhere to be seen. There was no trace of Ling Xiao's aura on the Desperation Tower. Gong Yangnu smiled gloatingly. Ha ha ha. He died just like that? That's too useless. No. Jin Ming stood up abruptly, and his pupils constricted. Ling Xiao's figure gradually appeared, while Yang Cheng fell to the ground with his eyes wide open. His head had been separated from his body. How did he do it? Gong Yangnu sucked in a breath of cold air. He didn't even see how Ling Xiao killed Yang Cheng. His aura suddenly disappeared the moment Yang Cheng's attack arrived. It should be the effect of his martial soul. Then he counterattacked and killed Yang Cheng in one move. It's that simple. Jin Ming said. He did not see the whole process, but it should be the case based on the situation on the field. It can't be. Yang Cheng is much stronger than before. Ling Xiao killed him in one move? Gong Yangnu could not believe this inference. Yang Cheng has improved, but so has Ling Xiao. Although Jin Ming said this, he did not know what had happened on the Desperation Tower. No one knew. In fact, Ling Xiao had used 10% of his ability as a half-step master when he killed Yang Cheng. If it was only for a split second and there were many half-step masters present, no one would have noticed it. Originally, there was no need for this. However, in order to solve the problem as soon as possible, Ling Xiao was too lazy to use a move that consumed a lot of energy. The move he used to kill Yang Cheng could only be considered an ordinary attack. It was just a hand chop. He didn't even use a martial skill. The winner of the first Life or Death challenge is Ling Xiao. The Tower Master of the Desperation Tower said indifferently. Then, with a wave of his hand, Yang Cheng's corpse was thrown out. Next, the second round, Ling Xiao will challenge Gong Yangnu. Senior, can you change it? Ling Xiao looked at the Desperation Tower's Tower Master and said, What do you want to change? It's too late to change the date now. The Tower Master of the Desperation Tower said coldly, Senior, what I mean is, can I challenge 2 people at once? It's too troublesome to challenge them one by one. Ling Xiao said with a smile. What? This Ling Xiao must be crazy. It's dangerous enough to challenge one person at a time. Now he wants to challenge two people at once. Isn't he simply courting death? Many people felt that Ling Xiao's victory had gone to his head. However, Gong Yongnu and Tuo Bashan looked at each other and saw the joy in each other's eyes. To be honest, after witnessing Ling Xiao's ability to kill Yang Qing in one move, the two of them didn't have the confidence to win if they were to fight one-on-one. They were thinking of retreating. However, after hearing Ling Xiao's words, they suddenly regained their confidence. One person might not be able to do it, but two people working together wouldn't be a problem. One of them was a close combat fighter while the other was a long-range fighter. They had worked together countless times. Now that Ling Xiao proposed to challenge both of them at once, it was simply a feast for them. This can be changed. As long as you're willing, the other party is also willing. We agree. Gong Yongnu and Tuo Bashan seemed to be afraid that Ling Xiao would change his mind. They hurriedly stood up and announced their agreement. As long as they agreed, Ling Xiao wouldn't have the chance to regret it. Then let's change it. Ling Xiao will challenge the 6th-ranked outer sect disciple, Gong Yongnu, and the 5th-ranked outer sect disciple, Tuo Bashan. The Desperation Tower master didn't seem to care. He was happy to watch the show. Dai Yuling, who had just woken up, turned pale with fright by Ling Xiao's crazy decision. Lan Yuer smiled bitterly. Yang Danlin scolded repeatedly. This little bastard really doesn't want to live. Only the Yuan Venerate squinted his eyes. No one knew what he was thinking. Sometimes he couldn't see through this disciple of his. Gong Yongnu and Tuo Bashan entered the perimeter of the Desperation Tower at the same time. However, one was in front and the other was behind. The shadow behind Gong Yongnu was a long blade. This should be a relatively common weapon-type martial soul, the long blade martial soul. The shadow behind Tuo Bashan was a bow, which was also a common weapon-type martial soul, the bow and arrow martial soul. The former was good at close combat. The latter had a terrifying bow and arrow attack. To be honest, Ling Xiao's choice to fight the two of them at the same time was a little rash and reckless. Many people had already developed some confidence in him when they saw him kill Yang Qing in one move. Who would have thought that he would suddenly do something like this, which instantly made everyone lose all confidence in him? However, Ling Xiao didn't care what others thought of him or whether they had confidence in him. It was enough that he had confidence in himself. You will pay the price for your stupidity and arrogance. Gong Yongnu sneered as he brandished his long blade and slashed at Ling Xiao. In terms of offensive power, Gong Yongnu wasn't inferior to Yang Qing. The slash of his blade seemed like it would split the ruins in half. The combination of the long blade and the martial soul was flawless. Desperation blade technique, cleave in two. When Gong Yongnu executed his blade technique, he had already closed in on Ling Xiao. His goal was very clear, which was to entangle Ling Xiao and create an opportunity for Tuo Bashan. Tuo Bashan had a killing move that required a long time to accumulate true essence. If it was a one-on-one fight, Tuo Bashan wouldn't use this move. But now that it was 2 against 1, he had a chance. This was also his strongest move. Clang! Ling Xiao's figure flashed and easily avoided Gong Yongnu's attack. At the top of the Desperation Tower, a thick steel bar was split in half. Not only that, the blade chi seeped into the ruins and created a huge crack. The onlookers were a little surprised. The 6th-ranked expert of the outer sect had a terrifying offensive power. Ling Xiao obviously thought so too. However, he felt that an attack that couldn't hit its target was meaningless. So what if your offensive power was strong? Do you know why I have to kill you? Ling Xiao suddenly asked. His voice was very loud. The entire Desperation Tower and the people nearby could hear him, because this was the effect he wanted. Chapter 306. Gong Yongnu's attack was still ongoing. However, no matter how fast his blade was, it still couldn't touch Ling Xiao. Ling Xiao used the Cloud Dragon Divine Walk to wander around the ruins. He was simply like a roaming dragon. The dragon's head could be seen, but not its tail. Gong Yongnu was unable to capture his tracks at all. This kid actually integrated the intent of array formations into his movement techniques, Yuan Venerate said suddenly. That's strange. No wonder I felt that his movement technique was a little strange. They were clearly walking at the same few points, but Gong Yongnu couldn't touch him. Yang Danlin suddenly understood. Furthermore, I didn't impart this intent to him. I've only seen it in the Divine Seal Catalog. Yuan Venerate chuckled. It can't be, right? You mean that this kid actually memorized the God Seal Catalog? Yang Danlin was shocked. That might be the case. Yuan Venerate liked this disciple more and more. He was really glad that he had taken Ling Xiao as his disciple before anyone else. Otherwise, he would have regretted it for the rest of his life. Gong Yongnu, Tuoba Mountain, you are Yuehua School's disciples, yet you don't know how to cultivate diligently. Instead, you take pleasure in bullying other disciples. Ling Xiao avoided Gong Yongnu's attacks as he continued to speak. I don't care about the life and death of others, but you shouldn't have made a move on Dai Yuling. You shouldn't have crippled her martial soul. You talk too much. Gong Yongnu's attacks became even more ferocious. You should be glad that you can still hear my nonsense. In a while, close your eyes and say goodbye to this senior sister. Ling Xiao said coldly. Suddenly, a streak of sword qi flew out and pierced Gong Yongnu's shoulder. Don't worry, I won't let you die so easily. Whoosh! Whoosh! Yet another streak of sword qi. Gong Yongnu's other shoulder was also pierced. To be precise, both of his shoulder blades had been pierced, and his hands were hanging down. Whoosh! Whoosh! For streaks of sword qi flew out in succession. Gong Yongnu's legs and eyes were pierced. Ah! A miserable shriek resounded from the Desperation Tower. Gong Yongnu was in a complete tragedy. Ling Xiao, you devil! Gong Yongnu roared. That's right, I'm a devil. If I can't become a ghost, my friends will be bullied by you. That's something I don't want to see. Ling Xiao began to make the final conclusion. Since there are so many people here today, I'll just say it in passing. If anyone dares to harm my friends in the future, I'll tear them into pieces. Remember my words. Don't regret it later. Whoosh! Puchi! The last sword qi directly pierced through Gong Yongnu's forehead. Ling Xiao took a deep breath and looked at Tuoba Mountain. Die, Ling Xiao! Although Gong Yongnu had died, Tuoba Shan had used this opportunity to accumulate his strongest killing move. Junior brother Gong Yang, rest in peace. I will avenge you. This is your killing move. Ling Xiao looked at Tuoba Shan mockingly. This is the killing move of the 5th ranked outer disciple? If it's only this powerful, it's too disappointing. Ling Xiao admitted that Tuoba Shan's killing move could kill most of the peak 9th level martial vein martial masters. It could even pose a fatal threat to most of the half-step masters. However, this move had no effect on him and Jinming. He didn't even need to dodge. He could easily block this move just by standing there. Stop bluffing. Tuoba Shan didn't believe Ling Xiao's words. Since the attack had already been launched, he only needed to wait for Ling Xiao's death. The terrifying arrow let out a whistling sound as it tore through the air. It actually produced scarlet flames, as if it wanted to nail Ling Xiao to the ruins. Ling Xiao should be bluffing, right? It must be. He's doing this to make senior brother Tuoba nervous. That's right. This arrow is fast and urgent. I'm afraid no one in the outer sect would dare to take it face to face. It was as if to refute his words. Ling Xiao slowly stretched out his right hand. The originally powerful move directly blasted Ling Xiao's right hand. However, there was no loud roar. There was no terrifying scene. Ling Xiao just gently squeezed his hand. That terrifying move had actually been reduced to ashes. I said that your so-called killing move is a joke in front of me. I didn't want to find trouble with you, but you had to provoke me. Don't blame me if you die today. You can only blame yourself for not knowing what's good for you. Ling Xiao slowly walked towards Tuobashan. In fact, from the beginning of the battle until now, there was not a drop of sweat on his forehead. There was not a stain on his clothes. It was as if there was no battle at all. However, everyone saw that he killed Yang Cheng and Gong Yangnu. Now, Tuobashan was not far from death. Spare me! Spare me! Tuobashan's face was distorted as he cried into a ball of tears. He was really scared. Ling Xiao was too scary. He felt even scarier than Jin Ming and He Suo. Of course, this was not about strength, but the aura. He naturally did not know that Ling Xiao's soul power was strong. It was far from what Jin Ming and He Suo could compare with. In addition, he mixed the vital essence of fierce beasts into his aura. That fierce aura was, of course, very terrifying. Ling Xiao, spare him. He already knows his mistake. Zhao Ci could not stand it anymore. She shouted, "You have already killed 2 people. Do you still want to continue?" Ling Xiao ignored Zhao Ci. He and Zhao Ci were not from the same world. Zhao Ci lived in the inner court of the palace. Naturally, she did not know the cruelty of reality. Ling Xiao was indeed used to seeing the weak being bullied and even killed by the strong. He would not kill the innocent, but he would definitely not sympathize with any of his enemies. Whoosh! Ling Xiao slowly waved his hand. A sharp light suddenly appeared and then disappeared. Tuobashan's head rolled on the ground like a rubber ball. Ling Xiao took his martial soul. Of course, he did not waste Gong Yangnu and Yang Cheng's martial souls. These 3 people's martial souls were too ordinary. Ling Xiao did not care about them at all, so he directly fed them to his blood shadow martial soul as nourishment. At present, his blood shadow martial soul was the main direction of development. Therefore, he planned to upgrade his blood shadow martial soul to the 3rd stage of a complete martial soul. After that, he would upgrade the other martial souls. After all, he could use 3 martial souls at the same time. At the very least, he had to make 3 martial souls go hand in hand. He temporarily chose the blood shadow martial soul, the thunder bear martial soul, and the giant sword martial soul. The ghost ship martial soul and the dark cloud martial soul could be temporarily put aside. Anyway, in the current world of sex, having a martial soul was the most basic. He had plenty of martial souls to devour. He was not worried that he could not upgrade too many martial souls. Moreover, he only had 5 martial souls. He felt that it was too little. Gong Yangnu died. Tuobashan died. At this moment, the air seemed to have frozen. No one dared to doubt Ling Xiao's strength anymore. Chapter 307. These 2 pieces of trash were actually killed by Ling Xiao so easily. What the hell are they doing? He Suo was furious. He couldn't understand. Ling Xiao was clearly only at the peak of the 8th level of the martial vein. How did he manage to kill 2 half-step grandmasters so easily? Senior brother He Suo, you think too highly of Ling Xiao. He blocked Tuobashan's attack. I dare not say that he used all his strength, but at least he consumed a lot of energy. Although it looked easy, I'm afraid he has already suffered internal injuries. Jin Ming said with a smile, "In the entire outer sect, only I dare to take Tuobashan's arrow head-on. Even Wang Feng, who is ranked 1st, doesn't dare to take it head-on." Of course, Wang Feng could have used other means to resolve the arrow, or he wouldn't have let Tuobashan shoot the arrow at all. Just like Jin Ming, who was best at defense, Wang Feng, who was ranked 1st, was best at movement techniques. He Suo didn't say anything. He felt that Jin Ming's judgment should be correct, but he felt that something was wrong. The chaotic scene made it impossible for him to calm down and think about the problem. Ling Xiao killing 3 people in a row had caused a sensation like an earthquake. Those were not 3 chickens. They were definitely not 3 pigs. Those were 3 half-step masters, and they were ranked 5th, 6th, and 10th respectively. Of course, the reason it caused such a huge commotion was mainly because this result was too inconceivable and unbelievable. Before the death challenge, no one thought that Ling Xiao could win. They all thought that Ling Xiao would definitely die. Even if he was lucky enough to kill 1 or 2 people, it was absolutely impossible for him to kill a third. But now the reality was that Ling Xiao killed 3 people as easily as slaughtering dogs and pigs. The most ridiculous thing was that the second challenge was 1 against 2, but it was still so easy as if he didn't use any strength at all. No wonder Jinming thought that he was bluffing. After killing Gong Yannu and Tuo Bashan, Ling Xiao directly advanced to the 5th place of the outer sect. This ranking was automatically replaced, not promoted. Interesting. Next, Ling Xiao, who is ranked 5th, will issue a death challenge to Jinming, who is ranked 3rd. The eyes of the Desperation Tower's Tower Master shone with a strange light, as if he was excited. He was very excited. It had been a long time since he had seen such a clean battle. He had never seen a battle where the weak defeated the strong. It was not a bad idea to treat it as entertainment after cultivation. He really wanted to know if Ling Xiao could continue to win. For Ling Xiao, even if he lost 1 battle, all his previous efforts would be wasted. Because if he died, there would be nothing left. Therefore, he had to win. Only by winning and killing Jinming would these things change. The onlookers gradually calmed down, because they had also thought of this. No matter how well Ling Xiao performed in the first 3 challenges, his biggest and only opponent today was actually Jinming. He had occupied the 3rd position in the outer sect for 2 or 3 years, and had even defeated a first-order transcendent realm cultivator. With such strength and talent, it would be wrong to say that he wasn't a genius. Such a person could even be said to be a transcendent realm master who had not yet reached the transcendent realm. Ling Xiao, although the 3 people you killed were not my friends, they have been with me for a long time. If you choose to kill yourself, I can leave your corpse intact. Jinming did not use a movement skill, but directly jumped onto the Desperation Tower with his physical strength, and then pointed his finger at Ling Xiao, revealing a domineering aura. His figure looked thin and weak, but his aura was so powerful that it was frightening. When his aura erupted, the ruins of the Desperation Tower trembled as if they were afraid of his power. Oh, is that so? Thank you for your kindness, Senior Brother Jin. But unfortunately, I am not interested. Ling Xiao said lightly. Kong. There was a loud explosion. Jinming's aura became even more terrifying. His aura was like a volcanic eruption. Around him, one could even hear the whistling of the wind. The surrounding bricks and stones instantly turned into powder, and under his feet the ground sank 1 or 2 meters deep. Such a terrifying aura. He's simply a monster. That's right. The defensive martial art Jinming cultivates was extracted from the divine text of an ancient monster beast. Although only a part of it was extracted, it still contains the terrifying aura of an ancient monster beast. This aura is even stronger than some first-layer transcendent realm cultivators. Ling Xiao frowned slightly. However, a smile soon appeared on his face, because he felt that his expectations were not wrong. This battle with Jinming would definitely stimulate the potential in his body and allow his strength to rise again. He did not dislike a strong opponent at all. On the contrary, he was very excited. No wonder this guy could defeat a first-layer transcendent realm cultivator. His physical strength was simply too terrifying. Under the analysis of his mountain and river martial spirit, Yang Kai could estimate that Jinming's physical strength had already surpassed the average first-layer transcendent realm master. Jinming's physical strength was infinitely close to those masters who had broken through to the transcendent realm with their physical potential. Compared to masters who had broken through to the transcendent realm with their soul and internal qi, Jinming's physical strength was much stronger. In fact, To some extent, Jin Ming's physical strength was even higher than Ling Xiao's. However, Ling Xiao's strength had improved in all three aspects. At present, Ling Xiao's physical strength was close to the transcendent realm. His soul had already reached the transcendent realm. Jin Ming's total internal qi had also reached the transcendent realm. But unfortunately, it was still not enough. When Ling Xiao's cultivation reached the transcendent realm, his internal qi would truly step into the transcendent realm. In contrast, Ling Xiao's soul had the advantage. In terms of physical strength, Jin Ming was slightly inferior. After all, Jin Ming focused on body tempering and had been a disciple of the Yuehua school for a long time. He had probably begun tempering his body from an early age, so it was normal for him to have a greater advantage than Ling Xiao in this regard. In terms of internal qi, Ling Xiao had a slight advantage, mainly in terms of quantity, but in terms of quality they were evenly matched. If one looked at it from these aspects alone, the strength of the two was very close, and it was even possible for them to perish together in the end. However, in a real battle, superficial strength was not as simple as it seemed. Jin Ming did not speak any more nonsense. He directly stamped his foot and rushed towards Ling Xiao like a fierce beast. In Ling Xiao's view, Jin Ming was like a mammoth rushing over. Vaguely, Ling Xiao saw the shadow behind Jin Ming. It was indeed a mammoth. The huge mammoth was faintly discernible. Obviously, Jin Ming did not intend to use all his strength to deal with Ling Xiao, so he only borrowed a little of his martial spirit's power and did not fully summon it. Mammoth fist technique. Mammoth impact. Jin Ming seemed to have turned into a giant elephant. Every time his feet stepped on the ruins, a deafening roar would be heard. His fists seemed to have become the two sharp tusks of a mammoth, directly piercing through Ling Xiao. This kind of power gave people a feeling that they could not resist. Chapter 308. Ling Xiao stood there in a fighting stance, and his aura flowed slowly. He didn't like to waste his true essence. Every attack had to be just right. The analytical ability of the mountain and river martial spirit gave him the smartest way to fight. Ong, the sound of a giant elephant rang out. It was hard to imagine that it was the strange sound of Jin Ming's fists. Puff! Outside the field, some of the weaker outer disciples spat out a mouthful of blood on the ground. Unable to bear the terrible pressure of the roar, they fled in panic. There was no doubt that Jin Ming's punch was capable of killing a First-Order Transcendent Realm Master or a First-Order Transcendent Realm Master with just one punch. As for most of the half-step masters, they would be blown to pieces. Just this seemingly ordinary punch was already more terrifying than Tuoba Shan's sure-kill skill. Ling Xiao could dodge it, but he didn't. He wanted to completely destroy Jin Ming's most proud body, so that the deterrent effect would be even more amazing. God Prison King Fist, Bull's Head Smash, Horse Face Smash, two fists, different moves. Ling Xiao knew his advantage very well. God Prison King Fist was definitely the best way to deal with Jin Ming. His punch, whether in terms of appearance or power, was not inferior to Jin Ming's mammoth impact. However, even so, he still focused on Jin Ming's weakest point. But Jin Ming was obviously not so easy to deal with. At the critical moment, he changed the direction of his attack slightly, which made Ling Xiao's attempt to attack his weak point fail. The two of them collided head-on with each other without any fancy moves. They were filled with power. Boom! Bang! The two terrifying forces collided, and an outer disciple's blood vessels burst because he was too close, bleeding profusely. More people covered their heads and had to distance themselves again. It was exciting to watch, but it was deadly. After a while, the two retreated at the same time. Ling Xiao floated up gently, retreated more than 10 meters, and finally stopped. He looked at Jin Ming coldly. On the other side, Jin Ming retreated more than 10 steps in a row with a surprised look on his face. Clearly, this was a well-matched collision. However, the one who was surprised was definitely Jin Ming, because he had judged that Ling Xiao had already consumed a great deal of true essence, so he wanted to deal with Ling Xiao as soon as he came up. If he did so, his reputation would only become even more resounding. His victory was even more shocking. This Ling Xiao is indeed extraordinary. He didn't even suffer a loss in a direct confrontation with a monster like Jin Ming. Jin Ming focuses on the body and is preparing to use his body's potential to become a transcendent. However, this Ling Xiao's movement technique is superb and his body is also top-notch. Could it be that this guy has strong potential in all three aspects? I heard that he has a treasure body, but his three potentials are very balanced. Damn, this is a real monster. How does he have so much energy to raise three potential qualities at the same time? The collision this time caused everyone to be inexplicably shocked. Those who hoped that Ling Xiao's previous efforts would be wasted and that he would be killed by Jin Ming were gnashing their teeth in hatred. Of course, Jin Ming was the most upset. From the time he was born, his parents had soaked his body in medicinal herbs, and he had always been walking in the direction of body tempering. Although his aptitude was not as good as some of the other monstrous geniuses, by relying on his cultivation method, he was able to defeat a first-layer transcendent realm master. However, today his attack had actually been blocked by Ling Xiao. Ling Xiao's physical fitness was actually not inferior to his. He was already 18 years old, but Ling Xiao was only 14 years old. This age gap made him feel uneasy. He always felt that compared to this monster, he was a little too stupid. This Jin Ming doesn't seem to be as stupid as he looks. His reaction speed and fighting skills are far superior to those three idiots. Ling Xiao stood there, carefully analyzing Jin Ming's fighting style. This was the first time someone had managed to dodge his attack. Interesting, too interesting. Fighting with such a person would make up for his weakness in fighting skills. He had never thought about what to do if someone saw through his weakness before. But today he felt that he could comprehend something from this battle. Ling Xiao, I didn't expect your body to be so strong. But unfortunately, this is not my original form. Jin Ming looked at Ling Xiao, his expression gradually calming down. Although Ling Xiao had indeed given him a huge shock, it was not as if he did not have a trump card. Next, I will let you see a nightmare. It's not too late to regret it. I'm a very curious person. I really want to see what your so-called original form is. Ling Xiao was telling the truth. He also felt that Jin Ming's strength was not limited to this. After all, he had not used any of his trump cards yet. Good. Since you want to see, I'll fulfill your wish. I just hope you won't regret it after seeing it. Jin Ming sneered, his body suddenly glowing with a strange red light. His surroundings were blocked by this red light. Ling Xiao tentatively kicked a brick, which was instantly smashed to pieces. It seemed that this guy had long been on guard against others sneaking up on him and had prepared this layer of defense. This defensive layer was very scary, but it could not take the initiative to attack, and it consumed a lot of energy. If Ling Xiao insisted on attacking, the loss would outweigh the gain. It was like the opponent had a hedgehog shell, but he could not move for the time being. If you attacked, you might be able to defeat the opponent, but you would definitely be severely injured. Moreover, Ling Xiao was not afraid of Jin Ming, and he wanted to use Jin Ming as a key to find out what he had missed. It would be a pity to defeat him just like that. Body of the wild beast. Following Jin Ming's roar, all the aura around his body suddenly converged and condensed on his body. At that moment, Ling Xiao felt that the person standing in front of him was not a person, but a ferocious beast. Jin Ming's body had undergone a huge change. The originally thin body had become a full 2 meters tall, and the muscles all over his body were tight, as if each of them had been tempered thousands of times, exuding the aura of a wild beast. Very strong indeed. This is your true strength. Ling Xiao took a deep breath and did not dare to be negligent. A golden luster appeared on his body, followed by a layer of dragon scales that seemed to be made of gold. In the face of a powerhouse, Ling Xiao would never underestimate his opponent. However, if Jin Ming's ability was limited to this, he really could not use his full strength. Just the sky dragon scale armor was enough. Mammoth trample. There was a loud bang. Jin Ming stomped on the ruins, and at the same time the loud bang sounded, smoke and dust flew all over the sky. On the ground, a shock wave condensed from true essence blasted towards Ling Xiao from below. Ling Xiao stomped his foot, and the shock wave stopped abruptly. However, his brows suddenly furrowed, because Jin Ming had disappeared. Chapter 309. Jin Ming's body suddenly disappeared. Novel! His aura also suddenly disappeared. The surrounding outer sect disciples all exclaimed in shock. In this situation, it was likely that only Transcendent Realm inner sect disciples, hall masters, and elders would be able to see what was happening. Ling Xiao furrowed his brows. Admittedly, his combat strength was extremely high. It could even be said that he was no worse than a first-layer Transcendent Realm cultivator. However, the gap in cultivation still made it impossible for him to do many things. For example, even in the soul capture state, he still couldn't detect Jin Ming's existence. So, he simply gave up looking for this person and instead prepared to fight back. Someone cried out in surprise. It turned out that he saw Jin Ming suddenly appear behind Ling Xiao and stomp on Ling Xiao's head with a ferocious, mammoth-like attack. This kind of sudden attack was also very fast. If it were an ordinary half-step Grandmaster or even a first-layer Transcendent Realm cultivator, they might not be able to block it, let alone dodge. Ling Xiao instantly judged that dodging was meaningless, so he stretched out his left hand and punched out. Since he couldn't dodge, he might as well meet force with force. At that moment, a look of surprise flashed across Jin Ming's eyes. Obviously, he thought that Ling Xiao wouldn't be able to react in time, because the first-layer Transcendent Realm cultivators he had defeated before were unable to react in the face of his sudden attack. Pung, Kacha. Ling Xiao's left arm seemed to be broken, and his body was sent flying. However, even under such circumstances, Ling Xiao still maintained a very graceful posture as he landed in the distance. He didn't seem to be in a sorry state at all. What terrifying strength! Ling Xiao looked at his left arm and saw that the heavenly dragon scale armor had been shattered along with his bones. Die for me! Jin Ming's body disappeared again. This move again. Ling Xiao couldn't help showing a sneer. With a crackling sound, the bones in his left arm had all healed. He didn't exchange his gold for spirit stones, so he had enough to use gold restoration. Although this was a move from the 9 transformation golden body technique, he had already selected it and turned it into a secret technique. As long as there was gold, broken limbs could be repaired. This was gold repair. The golden inscription suddenly disappeared and reappeared again. His attacks were still powerful. However, this time Ling Xiao easily dodged it. Just now, he could only meet force with force because he didn't understand his opponent's attack. But now, he had seen through the flaw of this move. Not to mention this time, even if it were 10 times or even a dozen times, Jin Ming would not be able to attack him again. After all, his movement technique was much stronger than Jin Ming's. Cloud Dragon Godly Travel. He was elusive. Coupled with his understanding of the mysteries of formations, he only needed to consume a small amount of true essence to take some very subtle steps. Jin Ming couldn't figure it out. Jin Ming seemed to be stunned for a moment, thinking it was an accident. He felt that his speed would be greatly improved in the case of the beast body, and it was a sudden attack. Ling Xiao couldn't dodge it, so he launched several attacks in a row. However, Ling Xiao dodged every time, and each time was easier than the last. It even seemed that there was a possibility of a counterattack. Jin Ming's judgment was not an illusion. Ling Xiao was dodging, and at the same time looking for Jin Ming's flaw. Although this guy's beast body was as terrifying as the mammoth, it was only a martial art after all, and its level was even lower than the Sky Dragon golden body. However, Jin Ming had been practicing this set of defensive martial art for a long time, so he had already cultivated it to the perfection stage. Purely in terms of performance, it was stronger than the current Sky Dragon golden body. Under the state of soul imprint, the analysis ability of the mountain river martial spirit was operating rapidly. Ling Xiao realized that Jin Ming definitely didn't just cultivate the mad beast's body. There was actually a trace of mammoth blood flowing in his body. He even awakened some mammoth cells like him. It was just that this guy's awakening was unconscious and relatively few, only 2 cells. Ling Xiao, on the other hand, had awakened 30 golden dragon cells. Of course, the first awakening of the cells was only in the infant body. The golden dragon and mammoth in the cells were like newborn babies. Although not many cells had awakened, Jin Ming had perfectly integrated the mammoth blood with his body, which had greatly improved his physical fitness. It seemed that Jin Ming would be able to step into the transcendent realm in a month or 2. What a pity. If you didn't offend me, Ling Xiao, you wouldn't have died today. Ling Xiao couldn't find the weakness of the beast body. It could be said that this beast body was full of weaknesses, but there were no weaknesses. The key to the problem was whether the attacker had enough strength to break through this terrible defense. If he could, the beast body would be meaningless, and it wouldn't even be comparable to ordinary offensive martial skills. Bastard, you're running around like a rabbit. Jin Ming had been attacking for a long time without success, and he had consumed a lot of energy. So he stopped attacking, and while breathing heavily, he stared at Ling Xiao, as if he was thinking of a new way to fix Ling Xiao there. Otherwise, the opponent's movement was too amazing, and he couldn't attack at all. It was too difficult to deal with. Tired, Ling Xiao still said casually. His left arm had been completely repaired, and only that part of his clothes was a little damaged. Don't tell me you're not tired at all. Jin Ming absolutely didn't believe that Ling Xiao didn't feel tired at all after dodging his attacks again and again. It was impossible. Ha, tired or not, you'll know after you try. Ling Xiao suddenly launched an attack. Although his arm had been repaired, he had experienced pain before, and he had to let Jin Ming have a taste of this pain. Divine Hell King Fist, Impermanence Twist. Ghost King Destruction. 2 fists again. It was another attack that had reached a terrifying level of power. Bang! Jin Ming didn't move. He just stood there, letting Ling Xiao's fists hit his body. However, when the 2 fists landed on his body, it was as if they had landed on a mammoth. Not only was there no effect, but Ling Xiao was also sent flying by a rebounding force. He landed 100 feet away. Ha, are you tickling me? Jin Ming asked with a disdainful smile. Well, his defense is indeed stronger than mine, Ling Xiao thought to himself. Although this guy's body was not as strong as the Archean demonic mammoth, it was still terrifying enough. It seemed that the destructive power of the Divine Hell King Fist alone couldn't break this defense. However, his attack was not in vain. The seemingly useless attack was actually going according to his plan. Mammoth absorbs water. Suddenly, Jin Ming aimed his hands at Ling Xiao, and like the trunk of a mammoth, a huge suction force was produced.